G'day battlers and welcome to the Clash of the Champions International, going to the wide world. I know last time it was the World Champion Brawl, but I guess we're still global. I'm PvP Steve, joined by this absolutely handsome human being to my this way, TontonBatteuse, not only someone who is, very familiar to many as a caster on the Play Pokemon circuit, but also someone who casted 3 of these international championships. So who better to have here than Batteuse? How's it going, Batteuse?
It's going great. Yeah, I've been lucky enough to see all these trainers compete in person, but I've never seen them compete against each other. It's always been within their own region. So I'm super stoked to see how they match up against each other across regional style.
Yeah, exactly right. So for those who are new, who are joining us, who are new to the concept of the Clash of the Champions here, today we're going to be bringing in the 4 international champions from the Play Pokemon Championship Series, the NAIC, the EUIC, the LAIC, and the OCIC champions, all coming together, duking it out in a round-robin format, and only one will emerge victorious as the one true international champion. So we're going to be doing sort of very similar to Play Pokemon rules here today. It's going to be Open Great League. We're actually going to be doing something a little bit different, or something that is about to not be very different, in that we are going to be using open team sheets. So those who may not be aware, although I'm sure that many of you are, the Play Pokemon sort of rule set has updated, and starting from this coming weekend with LAIC 2024, there are going to be sort of open team sheets so everyone can see each other's movesets. So we've sort of given that a go today, so we get a little bit of a preview as to how that might sort of change people's decisions. I guess we'll see how the playstyle sort of maybe changes. Maybe the moveset team building changes a little bit. But Butters, how do you sort of feel about this move towards this open team sheet format?
I'm glad you asked. I think it's a great move, especially how it's specifically the championship series, Play Pokemon, how that is ran right now. It's double elimination. You can get out of the tournament really fast. I feel like it's really, really tough to win a regional international championships. I mean, all these trainers right here did the impossible by being able to win these international championships, right? It's really, really tough to do this. It's really, really tough to win a regional. I can't tell you how many times I see the community after the tournament, and there's 20 outstanding battlers that are just so sad about their performance just because they thought they could have done better. It's not that they didn't have a good time or that they didn't enjoy it. It's just they have higher expectations for themselves. So I feel like any advantage you can give these trainers to be able to give them more of a chance to know all of the factors available so that they can have their best performance, so they can feel like, they didn't get gimmicked in round number 2 where Shadow Kanto Ninetales was running Solar Beam and no one runs Solar Beam and they just get Solar Beamed on their Azu. They lose a game. They end up losing the series against, maybe they felt like they would have won that matchup if they knew about the Solar Beam. So I feel like the way that the rules currently are in the structure of the tournament, fantastic change to give these trainers all information available. And down the road, when maybe there's more variance in move sets or attack sets, and there is more layers of strategy, maybe if there's held items or something like that added to the game, then maybe it could change down the road. But for right now, I think it's great. How about you, Steve? How do you feel about all of this?
Yeah, look, I think that on top of what you said, which I definitely agree with, although I myself is someone that probably would run that gimmicky Solar Beam to try and steal some wins, I think it also just does add that level of fairness to the competitors who, sometimes someone goes on stream round 1 and they might have a little bit of a spicy moveset and then it's revealed for everyone to be aware of. So sort of an anecdote I go to regularly is at OCIC, there was a matchup on stream, and there was someone who was standing there watching the stream that was going to play the winner of whoever was playing. So they could stand there, they could watch all of they could just learn all of the movesets from both trainers, and whoever was going to win ended up facing this particular person. And that's the sort of thing that is, it's an unfairness in some sense. And so by going to this open moveset format where you can just you'd have that information already at hand, you don't need to gather this information from the stream, then you sort of are in a little bit more of an even playing field. And so I feel like it's just the fair way to go for a balanced competition where, as you said, you can get out very quickly. It only takes 2 match losses and the tournament is over for you. So it sort of just limits the window of things that can go a little bit unfairly for you. And I think it's probably better for the competition.
Yeah. And to bounce off that point, there is a recent example. I don't remember if it was Peoria, but it was Eomero running a Bubble Beam Mantine, and he was on stream. And so now when he's facing other trainers, they all know he has Bubble Beam. And where Mantine, it's not a guarantee that you run Bubble Beam, and matchups can completely change if you're running Bubble Beam or if you're running Ice Beam. You're almost always running the Aerial Ace. So yeah, it can be a disadvantage also by being on stream early on, especially if you're a notable trainer and then you reveal that moveset, then other trainers have that slight advantage over you. So now that is out the window as well. But to your previous point about, being a little bit spicy, I'm a person that's spicy just like you, PvP Steve. And I always want trainers to find creative solutions. But when you look at Magmar Man, which just placed top 3 recently in Toronto, I would argue that his movesets were all very standard. It's just that he was running 4 crazy Pokemon that you almost never see. You see Shadow Kanto Ninetales, but you don't see it with Fire Spin as often. So that is one moveset, the Fire Spin and the Ember, that changes slightly. So I already am backtracking on my original point, but it's mostly the Pokemon. And we'll see here today too, Steve, that we'll see that with these trainers matched up against each other in the open team sheets, I don't think it's going to be that much of an advantage seeing the team sheets of the opponent. It's just all fair games.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. The one thing that may sort of really matter on this open team sheet format is potentially some Metacham movesets. Do we see Dynamic Punch? Do we see
yes.
Psychic? It may change some certain matchups, but we've rattled on long enough. Let's sort of meet these notable trainers. Not that anyone needs any introductions here, because first off the bat, we have the North American Continental Champion wdage, who not only sweeping through NAIC, not only coming 3rd at Worlds, but also topping out the very first tournament of the season in Pittsburgh. So, Butters, do you sort of want to just give us a little bit of a preview of what we've actually sort of got here from wdage's record?
Yeah, I'd love to. wdage is arguably the best trainer on the planet. And when he lost in Toronto, it was 8 calendar months since he didn't top cut in a competition. And this is a trainer that goes to a lot of competitions. He struggled early on in the last season of the championship series in the 2022-2020, or technically just the 2023 season. Now we're in the 2024 season. And he started this season on fire, as you see in Pittsburgh with the Shadow Dragonite. He also made that his 3rd North American regional victory in a row, which is just absolutely insane. He won Hartford, then he won the North American International Championships, and then he won Pittsburgh back to back to back. Only one flop, Steve. He got, I believe, 3rd place at the World Championship. So, what a terrible performance there by wdage.
Yeah, really seeming to slip. That's an absolutely terrible performance in a field of over 100 of the best trainers in the world. But also, in addition to that, sort of Pittsburgh, I guess the entire 2024 season so far has been in this same Pokemon Go season. So all of the movesets, the Pokemon are sort of been the same. wdage was running a very sort of, I guess you could call it a relatively spicy team in comparison to what is the main meta this season. There's no Metacham, there's no Lantern, there's no Gligar on that Pittsburgh team. It was a very sort of, a bit of a core-breaking team, and I think one that really set the tone for a lot of trainers that probably picked up a little bit of Shadow Dragonite action, a little bit of Defense Deoxys on their team, somewhat popularized by the World Championships as well. But I think that wdage has sort of come in, knows how to read a meta, and can really use that to his advantage, and that's just been shown time and time again. So wdage definitely sort of one of the favorites going into this, but they're all favorites. They're all international champions, right? They've had to go through some pretty tough competition with essentially not a lot of losses across the whole thing. But let's take a look at competitor number 2, being the EUIC 2023 champion TontonBatteuse, who is also a trainer who just like to run a little bit of a spicy pick in his signature Pokemon, which is definitely that Shadow Dragonair that brought massive success at EUIC, and has sort of just been running some dragon action the entire time, Butters. I mean, he's got a knack.
And right now in this meta, no trainer has won without a dragon or a grass type. So you have to have one of those types to put pressure on Lantern. And I feel like dragons are better than ever. I mean, we had an Altaria stretch where Altaria is really strong, but Altaria is not that good now. And these Spice Dragon picks are probably in the best position they've ever been in. Shadow Dragonair, Guzzlord. I believe Softoph just won a tournament with Shadow Dragonair as well. So I feel like Shadow Dragonair is really strong in the current meta, specifically because Carbink isn't much of a factor in these championship series, show 6, pick 3 type of meta. But yeah, Tauntaun able to make that spice work at the highest level in EUIC, which, I mean, obviously every international championship is extremely stacked, but be able to take down all his fellow Europeans. And I think I would say in these other tournaments in this current meta of this season, it looks like he just went about even. So looks like he is trying to adapt and adjust from what he did so far in this season and try to change that and change up the team a little bit to try to have some success against these best of the best in this battle of the regions here.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you can sort of see that if you sort of compare his team from Lille to his team from EUIC, you can see that a lot of picks are sort of still hanging around. We've still got that Metacham, Lickitung, Registeel, Shadow Dragonair. So 2/3 of his team is sticking with what he's comfortable with and then sort of working around the edges, seeing what might work. He's replaced Shadow Alolan Ninetales with a Frostlass here, sort of trying to bring in that Ice type. In Barcelona, you could see that he was trying out Shadow Alolan Sandslash as his Ice type. So he's experimenting, he's figuring out what works, and I'm in love whenever any trainer on the Play Pokemon circuit is running a Guzzlord. So when you see that massive thing with a huge mouth taking up most of the screen, it's just always gives pleasure to my heart. But I have a feeling that the Shadow Dragonair Master may sort of put up a solid fight here, especially when, Shadow Dragonair is a Pokemon that you're resisting moves from Lantern, you're resisting basically most of the elemental moves, right? So water types can just sort of get a little bit stuck. There's not a lot of fire action, so, maybe if Magmar Man was here with that Fire Spin Ninetales, he might struggle a little bit, but definitely a trainer who is worth watching and can really pull some significantly strong things out. And again, was 9th place at the World Championships as well. Nothing to sneeze at. Third competitor off the rank is LAIC champion JWNaldo, who not only went 8-0 in LAIC, but also doing really well this season with a 9th place at Curitiba with a team that looks a little bit familiar, Butters. I don't know if we've seen this before.
Yeah, that looks, almost the same as what wdage ran, but looks like, I feel like he ran a Lantern over a Shadow Swampert. But yeah, that team looks vaguely familiar. What is that team reminding you of?
Yeah, actually, wdage is definitely what I was thinking. There was just that one tiny swap there of the water type, but going in with the defense Deoxys instead of the widely used, 75% usage Metacham. We've got the Dugong, we've got the Shadow Dragonite, the Lickitung, the Registeel sort of coming in as well. So, some differences, but I feel like that main core of Deoxys, Dugong, and Shadow Dragonite just feels like a wdage team. So sort of trying to learn from the other international champions, already having success this season as well. And this, I believe, Curitiba was held in that first month of the season. So sort of going hot off the heels of wdage's big win. So interested to see how this sort of might play out as well. And of course, JW Naldo, a very strong competitor in non sort of championship series circuits as well. Definitely a really strong one to watch out for. But for the competitor, we're coming home to my end at OCIC, potentially the only ever OCIC, but we'll just have to wait and find out. But Yakovich coming through with not only a win, Butters, but with the highest win percentage of all time until very recently. Held that title for a very long time, from February 2023, with a 96% win rate. He only lost a single battle, and it was with a Pidgeot. Just feather dancing his Galarian Stunfisk in the very first round, and that just sort of set a fire under him, and off he went in a really dominant performance. And of course, I mean, Butter's got to come to Australia, so huge wins.
Yeah. No, I didn't know that little stat that his only loss was to that Feather Dance Pidgeot. That is extremely interesting. Yeah, I mean, it was dominant. It felt like, especially in that tournament at the Oceania International Championships, we had Fish on the heater just with the Spice team. We had more Spice in that top three as well. And it was the meta team. It was the precision from Yakovich that just really ran through the competition. It felt like a final boss for all these Spice teams trying to take it to the next level, and Yakovich just handled it without problem. And interestingly enough, in the World Championships, he completely flipped the script and brought way spicier Pokemon, bringing the Shadow Charizard, Dunsparce, and Cresselia to that World Championships, which I don't blame him, because when you're against the best of the best, you have to find a way to try to stick out a little bit, try to do something slightly different that your opponents aren't expecting. But we'll see. This is going to be his first bite of the apple in this current meta. So I'm actually really excited to see his take on the meta, because we know if he's going to repeat his performance like at OCIC, he might run those hard meta picks and just play with that precision like he did in the past.
Yeah, and I think that is a really good point. I think that at OCIC, Yakovich definitely was that final boss with the main meta lineup, sort of forcing trainers to test their mettle, test their teams. Do you really stack up against the Open Great League meta at this current time? And every single time, that answer was a resounding no. Yakovich sort of defending them off until he sort of was able to hold that trophy high for the Oceanic International Championships. So we've met our four competitors. I think it's finally time that we sort of get into the action again. These four trainers facing off in the Open Great League. Only one will come out of this round robin as the ultimate victor. And we're going to get it started with, one face that we've just seen right now. We've got Yakovich on the left versus JW Naldo on the right. And we do have the teams on the left and the right-hand side as well. And we don't have the movesets on screen, but we can, because again, this is an open team sheet format, we can sort of just read them as we go. So Yakovich on the left running that Metacham with the classic moveset of Counter, Ice Punch, and Psychic. We have Spark Lantern with Thunderbolt and Surf, of course. I've got a standard Lickitung there as well with Lick Body Slam, Power Whip. We've got Frostlass, again, just a classic Avalanche Shadow Ball. We've got Umbreon with Snarl, Foul Play, and Last Resort. No sneaky Psychics coming through here. And we have Superior with the Vine Whip, Frenzy Plant, and Aerial Ace. I mean, Butters, do you want to take us through JW Naldo's team and one pick in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, we had a tournament win recently in the European region with Leaf Tornado. So it's great to know the open team sheets here, to know you don't have to worry about that Leaf Tornado. And on JW Naldo's side, he's running the Defense Form Deoxys with the counter, the Psycho Boost, and the Thunderbolt, which is just much better against the steel types. So you usually want to run that Thunderbolt coverage. The Lantern with Spark instead of Water Gun, Thunderbolt, Surf. Lickitung is just the classic Lick Body Slam, Power Whip. Frostlass, it's the classic Powder Snow, Avalanche, Shadow Ball. Registeel with Focus Blast, Zap Cannon. And then Shadow Dragonair is going to be running that Body Slam and Aqua Tail. And of course, Dragon Breath. And that one Pokemon that I feel like there's been a missing back pocket factor, in my opinion, where in the past it used to be a Lonely Ninetales with Charm. Really talented trainers like Dancing Rob or other trainers that brought this Charm Lonely Ninetales could have it in the back and use 2 Protect Shields and just sweep the back line. Weirdly enough, Shadow Dragonair, if you go down shields early and you just double Protect Shield it in the back, it's really hard to deal with. Almost no Pokemon beats it in the 2 Protect Shield situation unless you're running Charm. Even Frostlass, you're not going to be able to beat that Shadow Dragonair. It just overwhelms you with the pressure. I think maybe in the 2s you can win. In the 1s, the Shadow Dragonair does take that just takes the battle just because of pressure and charge attack priority. So I'm interested to see how JW Naldo utilizes that Shadow Dragonair in this matchup, which is against a pretty full meta team. So it's going to have to place it really well. And it might change Yakobevich's thought process on when he wants to use Protect Shields if he thinks that Shadow Dragonair is just looming in the back. Because remember, there is no Steel type on Yakobevich's side. So there's no Steel type, there's no Fairy type. There's literally nothing to resist the Dragon type damage.
Yeah, you're really just like Frostlass is the best bet you've got as sort of a hard counter. But you mentioned like Dragon Breath is so oppressive of a move. You throw that on a Pokemon like Shadow Dragonair, and you can do a lot of damage if you can just shield up those avalanches. So Yakovich can't just rely on that just pure, just throw in some bulky Pokemon and survive, because Dragonair will be able to pummel through a lot of these big meta picks. And again, resisting the move sets from Lantern, for example, which is sort of one of the classic bulky types. So may have to sort of think of some strategies, think of some ways to pivot around JW Naldo. Also just stealing that Shadow Dragonite from TontonBatteuse, knowing that he was going to face him, decided I'm going to beat you with your own stuff a little bit later. But we've also sort of got some very similar teams for the most part. The top 4 Pokemon on each team are basically identical. And so it's really just those last 2 picks, the Umbreon and the Superior for Yakobevic, and the Registeel and the Shadow Dragonair on JW Naldo's side. And to be honest, I feel like Umbreon definitely has a bit of play here. Obviously you have the Frostlass over on JW Naldo's side. You have the Defense Deoxys, which is always a pretty interesting matchup where both Pokemon are doing super effective damage to each other. You've got Umbreon throwing the foul plays, and you have the super effective counters coming in from Defense Deoxys. And then you've sort of got pretty nice neutral play against the rest of the team. Dragonair is still a threat, but you are talking about a threat when a no shield gets spent anywhere. And if you're sort of going to be running a Pokemon like Frostlass, for example, Frostlass would usually like at least 1 shield when to sort of get that big success. Famously, Frostlass with energy is very dangerous, but it becomes a little bit less dangerous if it goes down to the first foul play it sees. So there may be a little bit of strategic lineup selecting, trying to land some Pokemon in the right spot to make sure that Yakovich and JW Naldo can do the most effective things on each side. But lead predictions, Butters, because I feel like it could go in so many different directions here.
Yes, you made a great point about Umbreon, and that kind of forces out some Registeel from JW Naldo, I feel like, because first of all, Registeel just looks really strong against Yakovich's team because Medicham is the best answer, but we know that it's running Psychic, and so does JW Naldo. That's a huge factor in these open team sheets. Now that you know that this Medicham has Psychic, this Registeel, if you say swap it, it's really going to beat every single thing on Yakovich's team besides maybe Lantern. Lantern is probably the only Pokemon that could pick up that matchup if you say swap that Registeel. So I feel like it's likely going to be Registeel in the back. And I feel like Registeel's Shadow Dragonair is really strong. So you might just put that Shadow Dragonair in the lead if you are JW Naldo. And on Yakobevich's side, I feel like the best way to pin down both of those Pokemon is by putting Medicham in the lead. If you put Medicham in the lead, Medicham can actually beat Shadow Dragonair because it's so bulky. Shadow Dragonair can win in some certain scenarios, but Medicham slightly can beat it because of its bulk. So I feel like if you can beat Shadow Dragonair with that, and if you can beat Registeel on the say swap by being in the lead and having that energy advantage when they swap into you, or preventing the Registeel from swapping into you, would be a really smart lead from Yakovich.
Yeah, I'm in 100% agreement. And that Metacham is always going to be important when you are staring down the barrel of a team with Lickitung and Registeel. And no necessarily hard answer to Metacham, which is always a hard
Well,
thing to do. But
I would say JW Naldo is balancing his team well because he has Frostlass and Defense Form Deoxys. And if you lead that Defense Form Deoxys or Frostlass in the Metacham, it's one of the few Pokemon that I feel like will force a pivot out of Yakovich. So I do like, I would say on paper, Yakovich is once again going back to his Oceania OCIC roots in running with the hard meta. I feel like the way JW Naldo constructed his team puts a lot of pressure on the pressure points of these hard meta teams, where I feel like in terms of flexibility, JW Naldo is going to have the clear advantage of what you can mess around with in terms of lineups.
yeah, it's very sort of, on the one hand, it is neutral, but it is also really sort of a pressuring team. It's a team that you really have to think about when you're choosing what team to go into it with. So Yakovich definitely going to have to put some real thought into which Pokemon he'd actually like to select to bring into JW Naldo's team, because I think you're right. JW does have some flexibility and he can go in a few different builds, a few different directions that could play out very differently depending on what we see. So let's get into game number 1 of the Clash of the Champions International, Yakovich versus JW Naldo, and we go straight into an Umbreon into a Defense Deoxys, and we can see that we've got a lot of bulk in the back on JW Naldo's side, and that Metacham is sort of waiting in the back in probably a pretty good position, I think.
I think that was a great lead by Yakovich here. I think he was kind of predicting that he was expecting JW Naldo to expect the Metacham lead and to put a Metacham answer in the lead. And JW Naldo did put that Metacham answer in the lead, put that Defense Form Deoxys in the front. And this Umbreon is so safe against everything but Registeel. And Registeel is so safe too. So he was expecting that in the back. So I think that was brilliant play. Once again, Yakovich acting like a final boss in terms of precision to start off this game number 1.
No, absolutely. And you can see the foul plays are flying. We're really going to just start chipping damage onto this Lickitung. So, you don't want to go straight into your Metacham if you want to go into Metacham at all. But the Body Slam actually coming out here, going onto the Umbreon. We can see we're just going to take that all day, every day. And then farming us more energy, going for another foul play here. Yeah, you have to consider, like, you've got this Metacham, but there could be a Registeel in the back. You could be making some predictions. You have to think about what makes sense. And you don't necessarily want to be going in with your Frostlass up against Registeel, especially in an even scenario, because that Registeel can really do a lot of damage to you. But it's going to be a decision here. Where do you want to preserve a shield? Do you want to try and win switch advantage, or do you want to try and get a little bit sneaky and finish something off? But it looks like Yakovich going to let the Umbreon go. Probably the right play.
Yeah, and the problem is the timers are so misaligned, so it's hard to switch there, and then JW Naldo will have his full timer available, and so now you bring in the Frostlass to go for the Powder Stone down. I like this move. You're going to get a lot of energy out of it. You're going to be able to either soak this Power Whip or give up your first protection of the game. Just soaks the Power Whip here, goes for that continued Powder Stone down, and actually pivoting into the Defense Form Deoxys and soaking this Shadow Ball. No, actually giving up the Protect Shield against this Frostlass here, thinking that Defense Form Deoxys might have some good matchups in the back, and he is right, because Metacham is in the back. So this is really the only option for the Defense Form Deoxys. So now putting the pressure on, using the Psycho Boost, picking up a low health Frostlass Protect Shield.
Yeah, I mean, both trainers know there is no Rock Slide here, so going really for that low energy Psycho Boost to try and get a second one off, but looks like charge move priority, and we end up with the Avalanche coming through. JW Naldo just going to let it go through, no need to defend that tiny little bit of health on that Defense Deoxys, and now just knows that there is that Metacham in the back that he has to deal with, and so has to think, do I want to get a little bit of energy on Registeel? And that looks like it is the play. We'll have to consider soaking up a charge move here from Frostlass, but again, knows, confident that there is not a dynamic punch on that Metacham in the back. We know it's Ice Punch Psychic, and so shields up the Shadow Ball here. Really nice call, and there is the quick swap into the Metacham, and now it is just straight into the Zap Cannons, hoping, praying for that 67% chance of getting the debuff here. trying to weaken down those counters. And do we get the debuff? We do not.
Oh no, does not get the debuff. That might be game there because you need to get the 3 zap cannons before you get knocked out. And you have no protect shields remaining. You probably needed the swap on a psychic, probably on this psychic, because if you get the next debuff on the zap cannon, you have to endure all these counters to be able to survive, and you can't take that psychic damage. So you're still going to try to go for it. If you can get the debuff here and somehow hold on to counters and swap on the zap cannon, you have a chance. There's the debuff. You have to swap on this ice punch, but it's really smart play. Don't even go for the psychic, just go for the ice punch. You need some sort of chip damage. Yakovich is going to be able to ice punch in just with a counter, pretty much finish off this Medicham.
Yeah.
This Registeel.
Yeah, not a lot in the bank. JW Naldo not even tapping there, knew where the game was going to go and really just letting it all go down in the end. So Yakovich takes really going into that final boss. JW really played quite well with that Frostlass, but some really heads up plays from Yakovich in putting the energy on the Frostlass. Again, Frostlass with energy is dangerous. And so when you sort of come in, you get a bit of farm, you know that you will have to tank a power whip from JW Naldo's power whip from Lickitung, but you know that you can do that. You know how valuable that energy is going to be a little bit later, and really just put that on display with Medicham just rounding it all out in the end, which maybe comes down to a little bit the fact that JW Naldo's team was potentially a little bit weak to that Medicham. A little bit of a sort of close to an ABB scenario where the Lickitung and the Registeel aren't the perfect Medicham answers. Not necessarily the worst against it, but they're not awesome. And that main Medicham counter just never really got to see it.
Well, I'm going to zag here, if I may. I think JWNaldo is putting too much respect on Medicham's name, because if you want to protect yourself from Medicham with a hard counter, there's 2 options. There's Frostlass and there's Defense Form Deoxys. The problem with that is if you're going to bring something like a Lickitung as well to be okay against Medicham, be kind of neutral to Medicham, because Lickitung just ends up pretty neutral to it, you're bringing 2 things that are weak to Umbreon, because you're either bringing Lickitung plus Frostlass or Lickitung plus Defense Form Deoxys. In that game number 1, you brought Lickitung plus Defense Form Deoxys. I think the biggest problem was he was too weak to Umbreon. Yes, he brought that Registeel, but he was far too weak against Umbreon to be strong against Medicham, where the rest of your team is just neutral to Medicham. I feel like you need to bring something that handles Medicham. It's either a Defense Form Deoxys, a Frostlass, or a Lickitung, because you can play that neutrally. And then bring 2 things that can handle Umbreon, because I don't think you're going to have a problem with Medicham in this matchup. I do think you're going to have a problem with Umbreon, especially if you run ABA weak to Umbreon like JWNaldo did in that game number 1.
Yeah, you know what? That is actually a really good point, and I think it sort of speaks to that just base meta balanced composition that Yakovich is running here, because you sort of like there's a lot of really like decent answers, as we were sort of talking about before. You know, you've got threats over on JWNaldo's side, but there aren't the hard counters. You know, you don't have a hard, I mean, a Charm user, for example, would be putting that hard counter pressure onto both Medicham and Umbreon, which are sort of 2 Pokemon that can force their way through. And so JWNaldo is sort of forced to sort of go around the edges a little bit, really go for these sort of neutral Pokemon, these Pokemon that have sort of neutral play, like okay play, but nothing dominant. And so there's really a lot of opportunities for Yakovich to really just like mount a lot of pressure onto JWNaldo. And as soon as that sort of relatively bad lead for JW came out, you know, the Umbreon into the Defense Deoxys, Yakovich was just able to put so much pressure onto JWNaldo. And because it didn't end up in a spot where he could sort of put the really good Pokemon against Medicham, he just ended up with a Registeel, which is not a very good Pokemon. It's probably the worst of the 3 as far as what he was hoping for. You sort of just, the pressure was just too much. It mounted, and JW didn't really have anywhere to run away. And so I think he's probably going to have to re-examine his team, you know, maybe as you said, sort of move away from thinking about Medicham and thinking a little bit more about Umbreon. Although again, it's a tough Pokemon to deal with. You've got the Registeel, but outside of that, maybe you could lean into that Shadow Dragonair a little bit more. Consider leaning away from Pokemon that need too many shields. Even Defense Deoxys into Umbreon, you're in a really scary position there. So maybe going into some more neutral with a Lickitung as that sort of main Metacham answer, I guess, as well. There's a few different ways you could go, I suppose. I'm kind of hopeful for a Dragonair, but I don't know. Are there chances? Do we see it?
I'm expecting Lantern in this game number 2 from JW Naldo, because you're going to bring Registeel every single time to counter the Umbreon, and you don't really want to bring Umbreon and Superior if you're Yakovich, because then you're double weak to Registeel. So that actually just brings your Lantern to be wide open in this matchup. And I think that's actually really smart why Yakovich was protecting Umbreon with Frostlass in general, just to be stronger against the defense form Deoxys. So I would sit the defense form Deoxys, and I would put in the Lantern if I was JW Naldo in this game number 2.
Yeah, look, that's definitely a potential play, because you do get that neutral coverage, you do get that bulk, you've got decent play up against the Frostlass, you've got okay play against the Umbreon. You really are, again, you're like, the only thing you're not hoping for is to get RPS'd. Like, you do open yourself up there to maybe Yakko is able to land that Superior onto the Lantern, and you're in some trouble for a little while. But as long as you can avoid that just hard counter scenario, it's got some really good neutral play. So let's get into game number 2, International Champions.
Oh, there it is.
Okay, looks like we have one wrong video on the left-hand side, so let's just focus in on the right with the Lantern into the Frostlass, and I'll just click that off.
Yeah, so this looks like, game number 1 on the left. So on the right here, the Lantern is what I feel like was the best swap in for JW Naldo's game number 2. We don't know if there is a Superior in the back, but also bringing that Shadow Dragonair like you were expecting. And there it is, the Say Swap Umbreon, not leading it in game number 2, bringing in the Say Swap, but it's met by the Registeel. And this is the worst case scenario for the Umbreon. Most Registeels go for the Zap Cannon here, though.
Yeah, you can really go either way. The foul plays do start to add up, and if you sort of want that Registeel for a little bit later, then there is more, there's some reason to go for that Zap Cannon. Even if there's a shield, you've got that chance for that debuff to just really whittle that Umbreon down, and it lands, and again, no debuff. Ooh. This Registeel just is unable to get the Zap Cannon debuff by the seams of it. It's only 1 in 3 chance, but it seems closer to 4 in 5, but this Umbreon really just going to keep throwing these foul plays, do as much damage as possible. I don't think that we're likely to see a swap. I see this matchup sort of playing out.
I like the Protect Shield here, because now everyone goes Focus Blast, and now you haven't been debuffed. This might be the best Protect Shield of the game for your Umbreon. Actually, looks like Yakovich just lets it go down. This Registeel is fairly healthy now. You don't have a good avenue to just take it out, but if you do get the full counter down with Metacham, if there is that Metacham, there it is, the Metacham. Instant pivot in the Shadow Dragonair, and Frostlass is available, but Frostlass doesn't even want to see this Dragon type, so there is no swap out from Yakovich trying to pick up the Protect Shield with these Ice Punch here. A key factor is this Metacham is 1 turn ahead of this Shadow Dragonair, and there finally comes in the Frostlass.
Yeah, Frostlass ready to go. Sort of the Ice type into the Dragon type. You'd like it to be a lot better than it actually is. Facing an Aqua Tail, which really hurts that Frostlass. Look at that damage. And it's about to get Dragon Breath down.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, not even an Avalanche coming off of that Frostlass. Complete farm down. And now able to get this Body Slam straight off onto Medi. This is not great for Yakko at all. This is really devastating. And even Protect shields the Body Slam. That hurts.
In precise timing by JW Naldo on these charge attacks in game number 2, he let us snarl through in game number 1 on the Umbreon, but this time it's just been absolutely crucial that he's been on point with these charge attacks. And here comes the Psychic, or does go for the Ice Punch bait. Yes, goes for the Ice Punch bait, and JW Naldo calls it here. And now this Metacham is pretty much in double surf range. So what a huge change in momentum here for JW Naldo in game number 2, able to comfortably take it with 1 more spark down against Yakovich to tie up the series 1-1.
Yeah, so comfortably sort of taking that out as well. Like, no stress. He's been able to sort of sit back, rethink about what happened in game 1, and was completely able to adapt, completely right there with the Lantern, being able to do a lot of work as well. Yakovich sort of staying to a relatively just, meta line, just keeping constant. And I feel like JW's just got the secret, and that secret might rhyme with the name Shadow Dragonair.
Yeah, and it was really strong in that game. And I liked how he double protected his lantern against a superior because he brought the Reg Seal and the Shadow Dragonair. One thing that is interesting though is JW Naldo in game number 1 and game number 2 kind of showed ABB style lineups. You mentioned it in game number 1 where he was sort of ABB weak to Metacham, where he had that defense form Deoxys in the front and then Lickitung and Registeel in the back. Same strategy in that game number 2 with the lantern in the front and the two things that protect it against superior in the back. So is he becoming a little predictable with his team compositions here? Does he try to go for more ABA style in this game number 3? I feel like that might be the way to go.
Yeah, look, I mean, you have to think you're against one of the other best players in the world. These guys have all got really solid accomplishments. So you don't want to be running the exact same strategy every time. And again, it's one of these things that on these, on the Play Pokemon streams, you're on stream again and again and again as you get deeper and deeper in the competition. And especially once you have the pause between day 1 and day 2, you've got time to sort of recollect and figure out their strategy. There isn't that same opportunity here. You've just locked into the battles with your opponent. That's all you're seeing. But seeing 2 ABBs in a row. So is it Yako's time to sort of make a prediction? Just think about, okay, I think it's going to be ABB. And even if he doesn't make that right call, you can sort of, in the back of your mind, go, okay, if you've got Lickitung in the back this time, I think it's going to be a Registeel as well, and play accordingly. It can really, one of those reading your opponents is one of the biggest skills, and sometimes one of the most difficult skills on the Play Pokemon circuit. So it's something that these trainers, Yakovich actually has a little bit less experience on the sort of in these Play Pokemon tournaments because, not as many tournaments on the Australian side of things, and so needs to sort of, has learned a lot from the Sylph series, I'm sure, but has to make an adjustment here, and I have a feeling that I think Superior potentially might be coming in game 3. I have a feeling.
Yeah, so one thing you can do if you're Yakovovich is if you want to do the same strategy with Umbreon, and you could bait out the Registeel. So if you say swap the Umbreon again, you bait out the Registeel, then you could have that Superior in the back, and hopefully with positive matchups against a Lantern or something else. But the scary thing is if you bring that Shadow Dragonair again. So it's tough to bring the Superior. It had to be a really bold choice to expect Lantern in the back if you're Yakovovich. I feel like that's the one way you would bring the Superior if you're really expecting that Lantern in the back, or a Lantern as a safe swap, which I actually really like from JW Naldo. If JW Naldo leads Registeel, because we saw Yakovovich in game number 1, he wanted to lead the Umbreon or he wants to safe swap it. Safe swapping didn't work because Registeel was in the back 2 games in a row. So he might likely go back to Umbreon in the lead. So if you go Registeel in the lead for JW Naldo, I feel like it's a really strong lead. And there's only one Pokemon that makes you pivot, and that is the Metacham. So if you lead with the Registeel and then say swap a Lantern, there's nothing that really stops a safe swap Lantern besides Superior. So if Yakovovich thinks that might be a strategy, Superior is definitely the play. But I actually really like that strategy from JW Naldo because I don't think Yakovovich is going to bring Superior.
Yeah, it's a very risky call. It's insanely dangerous. You're very much just going, I want to land it on Lantern,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of places that can go wrong outside of that. Lickiting's okay, but that's like a consolation prize to landing it on the Lantern. So it's a risk, but we'll just have to wait and see whether it's a risk taken going into game 3. Someone's taking out the set and going in. We do only have one perspective here with a Frostlass into an Umbreon, which is not the greatest start for JW. And we can see that we do have the Registeel and the Lantern in the back. And there's the Lantern pivot, even catching the foul play for good measure.
There's the safe swap Lantern, which I feel like is a really strong play. We're going to see if Superior pops out of a ball any second now. It's going to instantly come if it's there, or maybe this Umbreon wants to bank up energy first, because if you do have Superior, you can easily... No, it is the Metacham. So that was a great call from JW Naldo to bring in that Lantern on the safe swap. The only downside is he didn't lead the Registeel into the Umbreon. He led the Frostlass into the Umbreon. So now that Umbreon is pretty healthy in that lead matchup there. And now this Lantern is just going to be able to put in a lot of damage before it goes down. And suddenly now the only counter for Registeel is out of the way.
Yeah, it's actually a really tough spot here. I mean, the Lantern not going to quite be able to spark down the Medicham. We will see a quick charge move here, and does want to use the Protect Shield, keep Lantern around, and now we'll be able to spark down the Medicham quite comfortably. And I guess, look, we're not saying a superior. We'll just have to accept that fact. But Yakovich is still able to bring in the Frostlass. And again, going for a similar strategy that we saw a little bit earlier in comfortably sort of coming in, knowing that some damage is going to get taken on the Frostlass. But you're accepting that because you're going to get a really solid energy advantage. And Frostlass with energy, we can all say it, is good. But unfortunately, Lantern was just a little bit too healthy, so forcing Yakovich to, really nice timing, by the way, throw the move here to make sure Lantern goes down. So not as much of an energy advantage, but still a little bit, although there's still a move here on JW Naldo's side. So making the Avalanche call as well, which not as much damage, but it might just be enough.
Yeah, key factor there, and did get the Protect Shield. The up a Protect Shield for Yakovich against that Registeel in the back, because Lock-On's not going to do any fast attack pressure. You're only challenged by charge attack pressure. Now you had to give up your last Protect Shield of the game, and this Frostlass just has nothing to fast attack pressure because it's going to be taking resisted Powder Snows or Lock-Ons in the back. So giving up another Avalanche to take this out. Will Yakovich double down with 2 Protect Shields? And he does to keep that Frostlass around. Keep it healthy enough to put on some pressure into the Registeel. Oh, and the swap on the Avalanche.
Oh, really hoping for some sort of Shadow Ball catch potentially, but Avalanche still a huge catch, keeping Frostlass around with energy, ready to throw that charge move at the end of the game. Now, an Umbreon coming into a Registeel, though. An Umbreon, not a lot of health left. I mean, only one charge move from Registeel is going to put this Umbreon in a serious world of hurt. And these foul plays aren't really going to add up. So I think it's really going to be a case of that Frostlass is going to hope they can get the charge move onto Registeel and then have enough energy to be able to get a charge move off onto JWNaldo's side as well. But it might be a little bit tight here.
It's going to be close. You have to get this Registeel in range of Shadow Ball. That is your win condition if you are JWNaldo here, so that you can if you're Yakovich, so you can knock out this Registeel with the Shadow Ball. Now it's going to be within range of Shadow Ball, but the smart move by JWNaldo was to go for the Zap Cannon so that you get the lock on down. So now you have energy for this Frostlass. This Frostlass is just so low. It doesn't have anything left. Yes, it's going to be able to use the Shadow Ball, knock out the Registeel, but Steve, I don't think it's going to be able to endure to get to another Shadow Ball against this Frostlass.
No, not able to. Getting Powder Snow down, and now this low health Umbreon coming out in the back and gets Powder Snow down as well. JW coming back and taking it a 2-1 after taking that first game loss to Yako. And I mean, just played it really well. Look, I know he didn't bring the Registeel in the lead with the Lantern in the back, which would have been perfection. Like, you call that strategy out, and it would have worked incredibly well against Yako's lineup especially. But even still, that Lantern safe swap, just so powerful, even without the Registeel to back it up. And, really able to push it out, even without the Shadow Dragonair, right?
Yeah, and that's why every winning team this season has had either a grass type or a dragon type, so that Safe Swap Lantern isn't as strong and there's something to guard against it. But in this particular matchup, I like the way that JWNaldo built his team, because you see that second half of the team is just so strong against Superior. Frostlass is dominant, Registeel is dominant, and Shadow Dragonair is dominant against that Superior. So really, you bring a lot of things that are strong against Superior, and you get your opponent to bench it, and then Safe Swap Lantern, you can just either decide to position yourself really well, or you can get some cheeky alignment tactics like we saw that game number 2 where you Safe Swap in the Lantern, and then you're able to just pick up the alignment against Medicham. And Medicham's no joke. It's on literally every single team always because it's so strong, and Lantern is still able to just pull through, giving up 1 Protect Shield to get that alignment that he desperately needed in this game number 3.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Really unfortunate. Like, definitely did really go for it. But unfortunately, yeah, just the win cons didn't end up playing out. Really, I did like the identification. They're like, I need this Frostlass to get the move off here, and then I need to get another move off here. Recognized, he knew he was getting really low, but he was like, okay, it doesn't matter about the health. I just need the energy. And if I just go the move, I keep energy, I keep the health on this Frostlass, and I don't just keep eating these lock-ons, then I'll be too low anyway, and I won't get there. So, really nice recognition, I guess, of the possibility of the win con, even though it sort of wasn't going to happen. Sometimes you have to find the best thing you can do and just hope for the best. And unfortunately this time, the best didn't come out, but JW Naldo really coming back in with just a solid comeback for sure. I mean, it felt like a complete flip of the script. JW Naldo just became this dominant force in the last two games. Like, we didn't see this in game one. Yako was sort of really running the show. The Umbreon was like the first foul play, just bring that Deoxys so low in game one. But JW Naldo really, really making his own in those last two games.
Yeah, he made an adjustment in terms of team composition in that game number 3 as well. And just the adjustment down the stretch to think that his team is so strong against Superior to say swap the Lantern. Just well play. And it's hard to not first of all, this is best of 3, best of 5. Sometimes you get into in championship series. As series goes on, things become more complicated and there's more variables, but you can notice more trends. It's hard to notice those trends in a 3-game series and then completely execute in a game number 3. It's not easy to do. So to be able to execute like that for JW Naldo, and first of all, like, shout out to Yakovich. I thought his Frostlass in the back, up a Protect Shield, or like you mentioned, up Energy in the back was going to be a really strong play. It would have been the winning solution, I believe, in that back line, except for it just got whittled down too low by the Lantern. In the end, what it really got knocked out by was Powder Snow and Lock On, which is kind of ridiculous, but it did. It took so much Powder Snow damage that it just got too low in the back because of the chip damage that Frostlass was able to hand out because because Lantern, it was able to dish out because Lantern is just so strong in this meta. That's why you need a Dragon or Grass, and Dragon came out ahead over Grass in this scenario.
Yeah, exactly right. That Lantern getting that second surf to whittle down the Frostlass, just that extra chunk was absolutely key. And really unfortunate that Frostlass wasn't sort of able to farm it sort of all that way with all that energy. But it does mean that we can sort of go to our very, very high tech, very fancy, very high quality table of scores here with JW Naldo.
I love it.
The 2-1 up against Yako. This took me hours to put together, guys. So please, show the love here because I worked very hard on it. But we'll see this sort of fill up as we go. Again, we have a lot more matches between these international champions to sort of keep on running because there's still a lot of really hype matchups to come. And I think we'll just keep things moving here and sort of go into our next matchup. So why not sort of go back and take a look at our other 2 international champions, check in on those guys in this round robin series with wdage versus TontonBatteuse, the North American Continental Champion versus the European Continental Champion. But I mean, straight away, Butters, where's Shadow Dragonair? The Shadow Dragonair guy hasn't brought it. JW Naldo stole it.
Where's Shadow Dragonair? Where's a dragon type at all? There's no Guzzlord. There's no Shadow Dragonair. There's not even a grass type. So how do you handle Lantern? Lantern on wdage's side is going to look so safe. Yes, Gligar can do well against Lantern, especially against the Spark Lantern. But double Surf against Gligar is still a lot of damage. We've seen other trainers try to counter Lantern with ground types in the past, and it just hasn't been enough. But you do have that Shadow Alolan Ninetales on TontonBatteuse's side. I'll just go ahead and read his entire team with the movesets here. He is running the Medicham with Ice Punch, but he is running Dynamic Punch. And this is open team sheets, remember here, like it will be in the championship series in the near future, I believe, starting at the Latin American International Championships. So now wdage knows that Dynamic Punch is out there. Then you got Lantern. The key attack is Spark. He is running the Spark version of Lantern in Lickitung. I'm just going to say Lickitung because Lickitung runs the same moveset no matter what. And then you have the Shadow Alolan Ninetales, and the key thing to look into, it is Charm. So this is also another example of key information that you will have at the beginning of this game, knowing that you are against a Charm Alolan Ninetales. With the Weather Ball and Psyshock, Mandibuzz is running classic moveset, but running Dark Pulse instead of Foul Play. and then Gligar with the classic move set as well for TontonBatteuse.
Yeah, I do think that Mandibuzz sort of Dark Pulse is definitely a nice play because you get to the first move, whether it's Foul Play or Dark Pulse, in the same amount of time. It's just the sort of second one onwards that gets a little bit slower for that extra little bit of damage. But, I mean, as you said, the moveset's really important because now you know there's a Dynamic Punch Medicham and there's a Charm, Shadow, Alola Ninetales. And so Wdage's Umbreon doesn't look so hot when you're facing that sort of lineup. But talking of Wdage's team, we do have the Medicham with the standard moveset of Ice Punch and Psychic. So we will be Psychic Medicham versus Dynamic Punch Medicham, which is a really key information to know. We have the standard Spark Lantern as well. So that makes an entire field of Spark Lanterns in this tournament, not a Water Gun Lantern in sight. We do have that Superior with Frenzy Plant and Aerial Ace. We aren't seeing any Lethal Tornadoes here either. Classic Frostlass with Avalanche, Shadow Ball with that Powder Snow, Umbreon with Snarl, Foul Play, and Last Resort. Again, no Psychics in this tournament either. And then classic Gligar with the Wing Attack, Aerial Ace, and Dig as well. So really, Wdage is running with 5 Pokemon. That Umbreon is not seeing the light of day. It's just, there's so much scary things. Like, it's not even that great in against like a Mandibuzz. It's like, you would love to just have it in the other 3 matchups, but I feel like it's just safer to rely on your other Pokemon that are a little bit more dynamic, a little bit less scared. Like, Lantern, I feel like looks really good here for Wdage. You've got really nice play up against the Mandibuzz. You've got decent play up against your Lanterns. You've got play against A9. You've got play against Medicham. You do have play against Gligar as well with your Surf damage. So I feel like Lantern is a very safe, a very bulky play. Wdage is definitely a trainer who sort of isn't afraid to get a little bit wild here and then. But overall, I feel like does have a lot of safe lineups. And so I feel like Lantern is almost a lock here, especially when there is no grass type over on Tonton's side.
You know what I think Wdage is doing here in this Clash of the Champions? I think he is running the meta to find the meta's weakness so that he can beat the meta later. Because I don't think this is a team he would actually bring to a tournament. This is just literally the best meta Pokemon slapped together on a team. But I think it's intentional to see what the weaknesses are of this team, what the flaws are firsthand, so that when he's in a tournament, he can use that to his advantage when he brings his own picks like the Dugong and other picks that he likes. And in this situation, one key weakness of this hard meta team is no protection against fairy types, because on TontonBatteuse's side, you have that Shadow Alolan Ninetales, and there's just no answer to it in terms of resisted damage. There's no steel, there's no poison, and there is no fire types. There is no way to beat this Shadow Alolan Ninetales in the 2 Protect Shield situation. I don't think any of these Pokemon actually beat it. I think Lickitung can beat Shadow Alolan Ninetales in the 2s just barely. There's not even a Lickitung. I really don't know if there's any Pokemon on this team. I don't know if you can do it going straight Surf on Lantern, but I would say that's your best bet. Honestly, running Lantern is going to be your best bet. It's going to be in a lot of your lineups. I think Shadow Alolan Ninetales and Gligar Core is going to be a must-have for TontonBatteuse in all 3 of these games.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It is an absolutely devastating Pokemon. I really like your point about Wdage's team because, like, he didn't run a single one of these things on his Pittsburgh team. None of them. 0 out of 6. It looks like such a meta team, and they are just not the things he ran for his, I think, 8-0 run in Pittsburgh. So, like, he's gone very... Like, it's such a weird scenario because it's such a normal team, but it's so weird for Wdage. It feels weird, even though it would be normal in anyone else's basket. But regardless, it really does have to think about that Alolan Ninetales. You've got that Lantern, as you mentioned, and then outside of that, I think you just have to go for trying to get a little bit of energy, trying to maybe use that knowledge to your advantage. Maybe go, okay, he's going to want to try and reserve his shields for that Shadow Alolan Ninetales, so maybe you start putting more pressure onto the other Pokemon. You go for more of the nukes. You don't need to go for any baits. You know, you go for those straight psychics on that opposing Medicham, trying to whittle that thing down, knowing that it can't psychic you because it has dynamic punch, and you just try and force Tonton's hand to just reduce how much he has, because it's sort of like, you know, Shadow Naldo Ninetales, it might be able to take out any one Pokemon from wdage with 2 shields. It might not be able to take out 2 Pokemon with 2 shields. So it's really just going to be up to wdage to really put the hurt onto Tonton's other Pokemon so that Tonton doesn't have that room to move with that Alola Ninetales. Although, of course, we could go a completely opposite way and have an Alola Ninetales sort of in the lead, start of the game, and just start off with the big pressure and really just sort of try and weaken down wdage from the start.
You know, I think, that might be a good strategy, but I think that's something that wdage is not expecting. So I think wdage is expecting that Shadow Alola Ninetales to be in the back. So I actually think something like Medicham, Frostlass, or Umbreon is going to be in the lead for wdage here, because I think you're going to be expecting that Shadow Alola Ninetales in the back. So you're going to try to win a matchup in the front line. So out of those 3 Pokemon that is safest against the entire team, I feel like it's definitely Medicham or Umbreon that is the safest against everything. And Umbreon is a Pokemon that can bank up energy. Like, if you bank up a last resort and then swap out, that last resort is going to do a lot to a Shadow Alola Ninetales later. It's going to do about half of its health. So I'm actually thinking that we might see an Umbreon lead from wdage, but it also could be that Psychic Medicham, because then you will be able to beat the opposing Medicham that's running Dynamic Punch as well, unless TontonBatteuse is running the Medi Slayer IVs. In that case, you can win that one Protect Shield matchup with the Ice Punch on the Dynamic Punch Medi.
Yeah, well, many things to consider. Now, in this tournament, while it was open team sheets in terms of moveset, we didn't actually trade HP values, so there wasn't an ability to sort of try and read into the Medicham IVs that there will be sort of from LAIC onwards. But regardless, that moveset knowledge is still very, very key. So, you know, maybe those Medi Slayer IVs are in play, but we will just have to wait and see going into game number 1 wdage with the Gligar up against Tonton's Medicham, and a pretty solid lead with an instant swap into the Shadow Alola Ninetales. Here we go, Butters. And so now we have to see, what is wdage going to do? How much pressure does he try to put with this Gligar? Does he try and get both shields off the bat with this almost back-to-back Aerial Ace? He's got 1, but will he go for 2 and then dip? We're just going to have to wait and see, because Gligar, it's getting pretty low already.
Yeah, and I like the way that wdage play in this team, because I would say Gligar is one of the bulkiest Pokemon. I mean, you got a lot of bulky Pokemon on this meta team, but you can use the Protect Shield there to threaten 2 charge attacks. And this dig, since you got the bait off, if you know Protect Shield this dig, there comes both the Protect Shield. So now you probably have to pivot into your own Lantern here. There is the pivot from wdage, because you don't want to get charmed down. All you have to do is get to a Surf here. Can you get to the Surf before the Side Shock? Yes, you're already there. You're not really too worried about this Weather Ball. We know wdage is insane, so he's going to know Protect Shield that.
Of course. And, you know, takes the Weather Ball. He's going to farm up even more energy now before throwing the Surf to take this Alola Ninetales out. Finally, has come out with that shield advantage, so has got the advantage and just has to play out the rest of the match. Still has 3 Pokemon sort of around, so in comes Medicham, sort of knowing that that Gligar is locked up in the back. Medicham in a pretty decent spot here for Tonton, and now just going to have to eat any charge move wdage throws. You know, that's the cost of throwing all of your shields at the A9. No shielding everything else.
Yeah, the key factor here, we're going to have that Mandibuzz versus, and getting that counter down is huge. Yes, you can soak all this energy here as this Ice Punch is going to be coming through, but it's going to be double Ice Punch. It's going to be really hard to counter down the Medicham here. So here comes the pivot and actually decide to save all that energy. And this is clunky because wdage, you don't have, even Gligar is not that great against Mandibuzz either. So there is no Protect Shield for the Mandibuzz, but double Ice Punch doesn't knock out a Mandibuzz.
Yeah, he's really relied on sort of backing up the no shield strat with a Mandibuzz, so having the big bulk there. wdage using his one and only shield here on the Aerial Ace coming in from the Mandibuzz, and now it's just going to race to this Ice Punch, but neither trainer going straight for it. Both just keep on farming some more energy until we finally get this Ice Punch with some nice timing from wdage. But as you mentioned, it's not going to quite be enough to KO this Mandibuzz, so we can actually just keep farming a little bit
Oh,
more.
the swap on the aerial is.
Oh, the quick swap there, just getting this energy onto the Gligar. Gligar didn't have enough energy to go for another move, so it does survive though, but not going to be able to get to another one. So it looks like it is going to be a Mandibuzz all the way down here and just throw a quick Aerial Ace into this Medicham as well. But this is going to be enough to KO either, so there's still a little bit of this game to play.
Yeah, and there is an Ice Punch bank. So here comes the combo move into the Ice Punch. You would actually throw the Dynamic Punch here if you're TontonBatteuse, because Dynamic Punch does more damage than an Ice Punch does. And this didn't knock out. Can you get to the Ice Punch? And that could have been a crucial misstep by TontonBatteuse there by not going for the Dynamic Punch. Suddenly, wdage's Medicham is going to knock out with the Ice Punch. Can it knock out with one counter?
Oh my God.
No, it's simultaneous. It's a tie. What an ending there.
Who saw that coming? What a big call. That Ice Punch just like, as you mentioned, if you go for the Dynamic Punch, that game's a lock. You're solid. Tonton takes the win. But going for the Ice Punch, it just keeps that Medicham around just that little bit to get that simultaneous KO. That's insane. That's Clash of the Champions right here.
Wow. And you know what? It's also, you had the Ice Punch banked, but it's sometimes in those situations, once you throw an Ice Punch, once you swap out, it's hard to know if you had exactly an Ice Punch plus a Dynamic Punch. So usually you want to go for that Ice Punch straight away if you're in TontonBatteuse's mind, because you think, oh, I just need to get a move off here before the other Medicham gets to their Ice Punch. I know I have Ice Punch for sure. Ice Punch is the neutral damage, but you mentioned if TontonBatteuse throws that Dynamic Punch, it does more damage, even though it's resisted. You would have gotten that knockout. And if you didn't get that knockout, that Medicham would have been lower health, and there's no way that you get the tie there. So that would have been a win for TontonBatteuse's side there if you went for that Dynamic Punch. But hey, now we got a reset of that first game number one, at least.
Yeah, it's not very often that you get a reset when you're in best of 3 scenarios, but here we are, still able to get one through. And, we saw in that first game the power of that Shadow Alola Ninetales, very much the linchpin of Tonton's strategy there, forcing that, as we were sort of talking about, as the only way is to play it, wdage going straight for those charge moves, just trying to burn up the shields as quick as possible before swapping out into another Pokemon so he could keep his Gligar for later and sort of finishing off Alola Ninetales elsewhere. And there's no real other strategy left to go. wdage, that is the only way to play it. And so anytime that Shadow Alola Ninetales comes out and there's 2 shields, it's going to be going for that same strategy. And wdage just sort of has to clean up the surrounding matchups to try and force his way through to a win, because there's not much you can do there. So I have a feeling that we're going to see very similar teams from both trainers, to be honest. I'm not sure where the pivots necessarily come from, because you sort of expect that we will see the Gligar come in again. You sort of mentioned earlier for Tonton that that core sort of the Shadow Alola Ninetales and the Gligar look quite powerful up against wdage's team. You throw in an extra little bit of bulk, and it comes out really nicely. That Mandibuzz sort of really nicely rounding out Tonton's team, because, again, if you're using all of your shields on Alola Ninetales, you'd love to have a Pokemon that doesn't need them to really sort of strut its stuff. And so I feel like Tonton might go with the same team.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought up the Mandibuzz, because I believe that it was strategic, specifically because the Shadow Alola Ninetales is pretty much always going to bait out Lantern, I think. So if you know that your Shadow Alola Ninetales Safe Swap is always going to bait out the Lantern, suddenly Mandibuzz in the back is really strong. It's neutral or strong against everything. And like you mentioned, it doesn't need Protect Shields, so you can use those Protect Shields for the Shadow Alola Ninetales. I really do like that core pairing for Tauntaun, but it does rely on the Shadow Alola Ninetales being able to draw out the Lantern. So you could see an adjustment from wdage in that game, in this game number technically 2, but this rematch of game number 1, because if you let your Lantern be the neutral pick against the Shadow Alolan Ninetales, then you don't really have an answer for that Mandibuzz. So is there going to be some big brain way that wdage is going to be able to handle that Shadow Alolan Ninetales? Maybe it's something like Superior that just gets the charge attack so quickly. Could it be the Gligar again because you could bait with that Aerial Ace? I expect one of the Aerial Acers to be matched up against the Shadow Alolan Ninetales in game number 2.
Look, if anyone's going to be able to do it, it is definitely NAIC champ, world number 3, wdage, Pittsburgh champ as well. So let's jump into game, technically number 2, and see how we do it. And straight into a Lantern into Mandibuzz, definitely a nice spot for wdage, but we know where it's going to go. The Shadow Alolan Ninetale is coming straight into the Lantern, so not even any swaps required. So now, I mean, I guess wdage is sort of happy here to go straight for that Surf to burn the first shield off of the Shadow A9, and now again can sort of comfortably go for a second Surf here to force that second shield. And then I assume we're going to see the same strategy here, Butters, where wdage throws the 2 charge moves and then swaps out to preserve some of Lantern's health.
I think he might stay in here because I think Lantern is one of the few Pokemon that can actually get the 3 charge attacks against Shadow Alolan Ninetales. I think Lantern should get to the Surf at the very end there. And yes, you do get to that Surf. So here comes the Protect Shield from wdage. I expect actually no Protect Shields. Looks like he's going to not care about the alignment and just go for either a Powder Snow down or a Wing Attack down. It's probably going to be that Wing Attack down. You're going to have to give up. Oh my goodness. Wow. He's actually going for the Powder Snow down here. How risky is this from wdage? He's going to have to give up one Protect Shield, but this Frostlass is going to be low health, but absolutely loaded against the back line of TontonBatteuse.
Yeah, this is like Yakobevich's strategy, but on steroids. It is going to be so much energy on this Frostlass, despite losing health. And now you can see in the back, there's a Mandibuzz and a Medicham. There's no shield on Tonton's side, which means this Shadow Ball is going to be going straight through onto the Medicham, and then can go straight for the avalanches onto the Mandibuzz as well. This is such a heads-up strategy from wdage, and now can just so comfortably shield up this Ice Punch farm all the way down and throw those Ice Punches into that Mandibuzz. And even if Mandibuzz in some universe was able to take this Frostlass out, there is also still a full health Gligar just hanging out in the back as well. But as this is how you deal with Shadow Alolan Ninetales.
This is a full sweep right here. He's going to be able to get to this Avalanche before the Aerial Ace is available. And there it is. That's a full sweep from the Frostlass. So the Ice-type Frostlass able to dominate the Ice-type of that Shadow Alolan Ninetales and take the 1-0 lead against Tauntaun here with one more Powder Snow. That's brilliant. Honestly, that's why wdage is considered the best on the planet to many people, and is arguably, you know, the best on the planet, is because, I mean, it's not, yes, it feels like a really strong strategy that anyone can think of to go ahead and Powder Snow down on a Shadow Alolan Ninetales to get loaded on the Frostlass. But it's not that simple. It comes down to knowing exactly what is going to be teamed up with that Shadow Alolan Ninetales in the back. He already saw that Medicham Mandibuzz pairing in that game number 1. He's expecting the same strategy in that game number 2. He put the Lantern in the lead, so he knows he can guarantee both Protect Shields in the lead, and then guarantee he knows it's going to be Medicham and the Mandibuzz in the back. What can beat both of those? Frostlass. All I got to do is get Protect Shields and then Powder Snow down a Shadow Alolan Ninetales. Honestly, it's next level thinking and problem solving from wdage. He's one of the few trainers out there that surprises me with his problem solving on how he wants to win a game. He surprised me once again, and just a masterclass of how you can do things unorthodox in Pokemon Go PvP and come out ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just a god tier at that sort of ability. And I mean, as you mentioned in the game, you know, Lantern able to get to that 3rd charge move, but we saw wdage sort of decide to no shield, to let it go so that he could bring the Frostlass in. And that's just like, you know, at the time it says that, oh, this is an interesting way to play because you have this sort of guaranteed spot to get the surf through. But instead, by letting Alola Ninetales throw the energy, it means that Frostlass was sort of able to come in and only had to burn one shield to get that full farm down, keep a shield in tow so we could just, full sweep through with that Frostlass. So just really powerful mind ability to be able to just calculate how things are going to go while at the same time predicting, I have a feeling that what is in the back is going to be able to be dealt with this Frostlass. And if you look at, Tonton's team, that's not like necessarily a guarantee. Like if a Lickitung comes in, you will have to pivot and sort of have to figure more things out. But because it was the Medicham and the Mandibuzz, wdage was in just such an incredibly dominant position, and it's just impossible for Tonton to be able to come back from. So now Tonton just have to make some thoughts. Like, do I really want to go with a team that is that weak to Frostlass if this sort of strategy might come out again? Is this when I want my Alola Ninetales to come out? Do I want to sort of try and keep it away from that Lantern? Do I want to do something really wacky and try and bait the Lantern out with Mandibuzz? Like, you just have to sort of think through these other ways to play to try and muscle through wdage's team. But Shadow Maul and Ninetales, I have a feeling it is still going to be the linchpin. I don't think this is scared it off. It is just going to be up to Tonton to sort of think about some other ways to do things potentially.
But wdage is one of the few trainers that you can't pin down with team composition advantage, where you have the Shadow Alola Ninetales, this Mandibuzz core that against most trainers it'd be overwhelming to deal with, but wdage just knows how to handle these situations differently than other trainers. So I feel like you have to switch up something. You can't be as predictable in this game number 2. Once again, this could be 1-1 TontonBatteuse versus wdage, because if he threw that dynamic punch in that game number 1, he wins the game. So he's not that far away. You're probably still always bringing the Shadow Alola Ninetales, but you don't necessarily just have to devote both of the Protect Shields to it in this matchup. You can just use its strength of getting either alignment or a 1 Protect Shield disadvantage, but just definitely double Protect Shielding it no matter what, I'm not sure is the best way to beat wdage. I still think it's a Pokemon you can absolutely bring, but I'm not sure you want to keep the same strategy in this game number 3, but technically number 2.
I think that's completely fair. So we'll get into game 3 or game 2, whichever way you decide to lean on things, to see if he does go with that same strategy or if he does try to sort of go for something a little bit different and maybe save one of his shields for some other Pokemon, or go completely wacko and not bring the A9 at all. But let's jump in and we go straight into a Superior, finally making an appearance into a Lickitung, and you can see that Shadow A9 in the back here. But so Superior, you'd obviously like to be up against a Lantern, but it's a pretty neutral matchup here. You can sort of go either way. The Frenzy Plants really do add up onto that Lickitung. But first up, we're going to see the Body Slam coming through, which Superior has some bulk, but it's not as bulky as you'd like it to be. So it does bring it down to the yellow, and now wdage has a lot of energy here.
Honestly, this is just the layering of strategy that wdage just brings here. Shows the Lantern that game number 2, brings out the Lantern counter in the Lickitung in the game number 3, and then brings the Superior, which beats the Lickitung neutrally. I mean, he's building like a layered cake, and he is just like an artist at baking it, because now he's going to have the Superior that knocks out the Lickitung. It's going to be able to get either a Protect Shield or a chunk out of this Medichamp's health. It's going to get the chunk instead, and you still have that Lantern in the back that we know can get the 3 charge attacks versus that Shadow Alola Ninetales, but surprisingly does give up a Protect Shield on this Gligar.
Yeah, swaps into the Ice Punch and burns that Protect Shield. Gligar will be able to outpace this Aerial Ace, but farming up some more energy first. And actually, we see the Medicham getting this Ice Punch off as well. So I guess we've got to see a shield here from the Gligar. Shield. Oh, okay, a weird little visual thing there. But regardless, that Aerial Ace is going to be coming through from this Gligar, take out the Medicham, putting wdage in a little bit of an unfortunate position because he did have that energy ready to go. Unfortunately, I guess just a little unfortunately late on the trigger there. But now it's A9's time to shine with 2 shields still in tow, and now it is wdage's turn to just burn these off of Tonton, with the first one coming here and then the second one in the back. And we do still have that Lantern, but with Switch Timer isn't up yet, so has to stay here for a little bit longer at least.
a rare misstep by wdage there. He gave up an aerial ace throwing on charge attack priority against that Medicham. You either want to throw before the Medicham has energy or just go for the wing attack down. But suddenly now Shadow Alolan Ninetales is just up against it. It has almost no health remaining. It's going to go for a big size shock onto that Lantern, but it just doesn't have enough damage. And now the Spark is just going to do so much. And that's a 3-ball flex and an instant tab out by wdage. And wdage technically wins this 2-0, even though TontonBatteuse had a chance to put 1 point on the board, but didn't do so, which in this format is not great for him.
Yeah, no, it is definitely unfortunate when every win can count in this round robin format. We do have a game 3 coming for that a battle win, but yeah, Tonton really just in an unfortunate position there with that. Like Alolan Ninetales again going for that same strategy. He's like, oh, I can make it work. I'm gonna give 2 shields to A9, and this is gonna happen. But wdage clicking into that had the Lantern just sitting there ready to go in the back as well, just going like, I'm ready. I know I can get these charge moves off. I know I can peel those shields off, and I know I can finish off that A9. I'm confident, Tonton, you're going to have to do something a little bit differently if you want to try and get a win here, because this strategy, it doesn't seem to be working, and I think wdage has just completely figured it out. And I don't, like, Tonton just has to change it up. Please. There's no other way.
I said before, wdage is doing a layering of like how he's playing his leads and how he's manipulating his opponent. I think now that he's shown Lantern and Superior in the lead, I feel like Tonton, an obvious decision by him would to go Gligar in the lead, because Lantern is so strong against him anyway. So maybe he's going to go Gligar. I feel like wdage is expecting that, and even if it doesn't happen, he needs to protect himself from that. So I think he's going to either lead Frostlass or Gligar himself, because we've seen those 2 Pokemon that he has been willing to bring in this scenario. So I'm expecting a Frostlass or Gligar lead out of wdage in this game number 3. But as I said before, I expect something from this trainer, and he's one of the few trainers that surprised me and surprises me often with the way he plays games.
Yeah, it's a tricky one to actually try and put a prediction on, so we might just have to wait and see with the Gligar. Called it, going straight in, but actually seeing a Lantern coming out from Tonton, and we can see that there's actually no Shadow Alolan Ninetales in this game. He has completely left it at home, not going for that strategy regardless, but straight away letting a dig come through on Lantern as well. So this game is going to be very different to the last 3 butters.
Yeah, I think he was trying to be as strong as he could against Lantern. So just bringing a Lantern that's neutral, a Gligar that can slightly beat it, and a Medicham that's neutral as well, and facing against this Gligar in this lead. And now Gligar is going to be able to get to this dig right before, but swaps instead and catches a Surf onto the Lantern. And that is huge. And once again, Tonton is one of the trainers not running Dragon or a grass type here. So there's no clear answer for this Safe Swap Lantern.
Yeah, it has to swap straight into that Medicham as sort of the best answer on the board, and it's just going to have to eat a lot of energy here because he sort of stayed in before swapping for a little while, so that Medicham already down into the yellow, a lot of energy ready to go, so it has to start throwing these moves at some point, but instead going to wait for this Surf, going to shield up, going to presumably go for that Dynamic Punch. Always scary to go for a bait when you're in these losing scenarios, so just going to go straight for it, and wdage letting it go through. Confident. He's got Pokemon in the back, Gligar handled this Medicham quite well. Actually an undercharge, but looks like not quite enough from the Medicham, unfortunately. So now just going to be throwing these Ice Punches into the Gligar, who's got the shield here ready to go, and will be able to get to an Aerial Ace as well. So it's going to be Superior Hour pretty soon, because that Lantern is just waiting in the back for it.
I mean, it's pretty scary if there was that Shadow Alolan Ninetales in the back, because you have no Protect Shields remaining and you're pretty weak to Ice types in the back. So I don't know if wdage was expecting no Shadow Alolan Ninetales, but it's not out here. And do we see a swap trying to catch an Aerial Ace onto Lantern? We know that is a possibility later in this matchup between Gligar and Gligar. Gligar's Aerial Ace into Gligar just doesn't do that much damage, but if Batteuse wants a chance here, maybe he can go for an Aerial Ace and then wing attack down, and there's still a chance to win this entire thing with a Gligar sweep.
Yeah, look, we've seen sweeps before, so the Gligar on Tonton's side having a lot of energy here. We do know that shinies do more damage, so potentially has the advantage there, but these Gligars getting very low now. We're sort of at the back end of these matchups. No catches yet, and there's no shield on wdage's side, so this Gligar will go down, which means that Superior will have a very easy time up against the Lantern in the back, but has to fight through this Gligar first, which there's not much energy, but there's still a shield in play on the Gligar, and I'm not sure how a Superior fights through a Gligar with a shield in addition to getting that Lantern in the back. So we're getting really low already and won't be able to survive another Aerial Ace.
Wow. It's going to get the Vine Whip down. No, it doesn't.
Oh,
Barely
no.
doesn't get the Vine Whip down. Shinies do more damage, but also somehow endure more damage. Is able to get the back-to-back, hits the Superior there, and Tonton gets that game back that maybe he threw away earlier in this matchup. So puts a point on the board against wdage.
Yeah, look, and again, key, because getting 3-0'd can be really devastating in these scenarios, but really able to fight back. Tonton getting his one win when he dropped the Shadow Alola Ninetales. You know, he was going hard on that strategy for the first 3 games. As soon as he went, maybe not, he sort of got that win. And maybe, as you said, you know, wdage a little bit surprised that there wasn't an Alola Ninetales on game number 4 after it being not only in all 3 games, but such an important part of all 3 games for Tonton's strategy. So a really heads up play from Tonton to really confuse wdage, and just go for a full spin, and yeah, really paid off for him and able to get that win back from the original game 1. So we did go to our first game 4, which, you know, we'll see if that comes again, but you know, we can go to our official high quality leaderboard again, and you know, it's 2-1s all round at this stage with still 4 matches sort of set to go. So we will sort of start to see these teams more and more as we go, and I think we will just sort of get right back into it, because I believe next up we're going to be going into TontonBatteuse, sort of hitting the stage again after that big win, taking on JW Naldo this time. So I have okay, I think we're good. Yeah, there we go. We've got the teams coming in again. We've seen both of these teams before, and this time it is time for JW Naldo to use TontonBatteuse's own Shadow Dragonair to try and defeat him on the field of battle, who decided to bring a Shadow Alola Ninetales. Almost he was expecting to have to face his own pride and joy here. But this is a very different matchup to the ones we've seen prior to now. So how do you sort of, at face value, sort of see this going?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, there is something that finally resists the Shadow Dragonair. So JWNaldo's Shadow Dragonair is not going to be as strong, but what looks really strong on paper is Registeel, because Registeel is going to be really strong against that Shadow Alola Ninetales and Mandibuzz core that we saw often, really strong against Lickitung. It kind of forces Tauntaun to bring Gligar, in my opinion, because Gligar is so strong against Registeel. It's one of the best counters to Registeel out there. I mean, that's why it really rose to prominence in this season, and a key reason why Registeel's usage has plummeted. It was really high at the beginning of this iteration of Adventures Abound meta, but now it's so low. It's barely cracking top 10 in terms of usage in some of these tournaments because of Gligar. So I think Registeel is so strong. That means Gligar is so strong. How do you handle the Gligar if you are JWNaldo? You really only have one true answer, which is the Frostlass. So you can play it neutrally with Lickitung matchup. Even Shadow Dragonair might be decent against that, but remember, that's a little bit scary. The Finsform Deoxys doesn't love Gligar because you have to either throw the Psycho Boost, which drops your attack, or throw a resisted Thunderbolt, and you're doing resisted counters. So I actually think a key factor of this matchup is going to be hinged on Gligar versus how do you counter Gligar, and then on JWNaldo's side, can you position Registeel against against literally anything but Gligar.
Yeah, I think that's a really sort of that very well may be how this thing goes. You mentioned the Frostlass as well, and we saw how solidly wdage played with Frostlass against Tonton a little bit earlier in that game, sort of number 2. With Frostlass just sweeping Tonton's entire team. So there are sort of, there's that potential again, but you sort of mentioned that we're playing in a little bit of a different spot here where we actually do have a Registeel there to resist. We do have a Gligar here that can sort of answer that Registeel. So there's a sort of an extra layer of mind to sort of think about how these teams are going to match up. Of course, we've got that Defense Deoxys versus Metacham sort of potential matchup as well. And Metacham sort of there is one of the other potential answers to Registeel, but I have a feeling that you may decide to leave it at home this time around because, we saw what happened when someone potentially respected Metacham a little bit too much earlier on in this tournament with JW Naldo. But, it could definitely sort of go in a few different directions here. So we'll just get into game number 1 with Tonton EUIC champ versus JW LAIC champ in this Clash of the Champions, and we go straight into a Gligar up against the Dragonair. But we've got Lanturns on both sides in the back, and we've got the Lickitung and the Reggie as well. But these Dragon Breaths seriously add up. So now the question is, does JWNaldo go for the same strategy of just as the Alolan Ninetales was doing earlier and use all of the shields here? Or do we see Tonton really try and push through and get some big damage off? But we'll have to wait and see on this very first charge move from Tonton. And we do see the first shield come from JW.
And technically, this is another ABB team from JW Naldo because you're kind of ABB weak to this Gligar. It's going to be hard to take out this Gligar. You're going to take this Aerial Ace. It doesn't quite knock out, but it comes really close. You have to get to this Aqua Tail. You do get to Aqua Tail. So you do win this one Protect Shield matchup, which is pretty good for you now because you've got the Gligar out of the way, so Registeel is looking pretty safe against the back line. And instantly pivot to Lantern because, remember, there is no Grass or Dragon type, and Gligar's out of the way. There's no reason not to instantly pivot to Lantern and just get an equal energy against the opposing Lantern.
Yeah, that's a really great point. You can just sort of keep throwing these Thunderbolts back and forth and back and forth. And JW is going to be able to, he was hoping to be able to land the Registeel onto the Lickitung, but now with the switch time is sort of well and truly out of whack here, going to have to stay in with this Lantern into the Lickitung, get a fair bit of damage here before eventually going to be able to go into the Registeel, but might not even need it because these Thunderbolts are really adding up onto this Lickitung. It's going to get pretty low here. One more Thunderbolt would do it, but Lickitung will quite comfortably be able to KO this Lantern if that's how they decide to play the game out. Their first Body Slam here, second one, and just going to let it go through as well, sort of comfortably. I mean, at this point, you can lock on down with the Registeel.
Yeah, I think you instantly go in. You don't want to wait your timer here, and that's good. You didn't wait your timer for JW because you don't want the timer from Batteuse to come back up. You want to try to get that full lock on down before the timer is available. So that was a smart play. You did waste like 2 seconds on the timer, but that should be marginal in the end. But there will be a back-to-back Body Slam here, so this Lickitung will probably be able to pivot. Doesn't decide to bank the Body Slam, which maybe he could have, and now he's going to be coming in with the Lantern any second, I believe.
Yeah, we'll come in as soon as possible. Tap, 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 tap on that switch timer so that he can bring this Lantern in. Doesn't actually shield up the Zap Cannon here. Really going to be hoping for no debuff, which we've seen plenty of no debuff before. And it's another one! This is insane. JW having the worst luck with this Registeel. And now, actually, unfortunately, does have to shield up this Zap Cannon, but now going to have 2 full strength Surfs sort of ready to go at this Registeel. There's that little bit of health on the Dragonair as well. Did have to eat a Zap Cannon debuff here, so maybe it would be better off to sort of go for the first Surf a little bit earlier, but I think either way you might still have to be going for 2 Surfs, so really nice play there, just farming all the way up. There's still a shield though, so like this one will go through and take out Registeel, but the second one will be able to get shielded. And we don't.
Yeah, and the problem is spark damage is just too much. Can you get the Dragon Breath down? And no, the spark damage, you needed the double debuff from the Registeel. So a little bit unlucky in the end there, and just the strength of Lantern for really both trainers there. Batteuse is able to take that game number 1 on the back of Lantern Lickitung in the back there.
Yeah, look, I mean, really nice play. I mean, JW Naldo's, I feel like his Dragonair didn't get to do as much as it would have liked to. It was taking a lot of damage there. It was really nice at the start because, you know, you were sort of able to take out the 1 shield scenario against the Gligar. You didn't even have to go for the 2 shield down. You were able to get the 1 shield down. But then JW Naldo just unfortunately wasn't able to get his Pokemon in nice positions. We saw how powerful Lantern was as a little bit of a, well, not necessarily even a safe swap, just a safe Pokemon in general, as soon as that Gligar was taken off the field. But I mean, it just wasn't enough in the end. I mean, we saw Lanterns just sort of go at it for a little while. Gligar sort of showed off why it is meta, I think, a little bit. I mean, straight from the bat, we got a Gligar throwing the dig, right? Or am I getting confused with the previous round?
Well, yeah, I think Gligar lost the 1 Protect Shield against the Dragonair there. And it actually brings me to the point that I wanted to make is I actually feel like on first glance, I felt like it was smart for JW Naldo to just pivot Lantern at any moment because you know it's so safe at this point. But I feel like once Gligar is out of the picture, Registeel alignment is really strong because unless Tauntaun literally just had Medicham Lantern in the back, that Registeel's going to match up against one of Lickitung, Mandibuzz, or Shadowlong Ninetales. So if you kept your alignment there, Registeel alignment could have won you the game, and you're not saving too much on that Shadow Dragonair because that Shadow Dragonair was insanely low. You're not even giving up much energy because if the Lantern sparks you down, it gets like 3 sparks. I mean, it's not unbeatable. I actually feel like maybe he was too rushed to instantly pivot Lantern, where I feel like the better decision making would have been, okay, Gligar's out of the way. Now I have alignment. Registeel alignment could probably win me this game in the back. And I think if Registeel matched it up against Lickitung, there would have been a much better shot for JW Naldo in that game number 1.
Yeah, I think that is really good identification because, you know, the switch timers were so sort of misaligned. You know, we sort of had 20 seconds only that passed on JW's side. So there was still like 40 seconds where JW just had to sit there without his Registeel being able to be on that Lickitung. And just sort of waiting and waiting and waiting, and Tonton was just able to farm up, you know, all of this energy ready to go, get those body slams sort of ready and throw and throw. And there was just like, again, sort of not enough time for JW Naldo to sort of catch up. Really unfortunate with the no zap cannon debuff again for like the 4th time in a row. Just insanely bad luck here for this 1 in 3 chance of happening. But, you know, again, that Lantern from Tonton's side just able to really add up the damage as well. And there just wasn't enough health left in the bank for JW Naldo to sort of come out and be able to secure the win, which means that sort of going into game 2, I wouldn't be too surprised if, you know, Dragonair plays a little bit differently or potentially even gets left at home. You could sort of go in a few different directions. I feel like Froslass could still has room to be really powerful here up against Tonton's team, and I'd really like to see a little bit more leaning into that Froslass because I feel like you do get a little bit more flexibility potentially as well. You don't have to sort of invest those shields. You know, we were talking at the sort of earlier in the stream about how powerful that Shadow Dragonair is. If you do give it those 2 shields, you can really power through most Pokemon, but it's not always going to be the best strategy. And so I feel like potentially it could be time to leave the Dragonair at home. Not that it's a bad Pokemon, not that it's even bad in this matchup against Tonton. It just might be time to sort of go for a slightly different strategy to try and play around Tonton's team in a slightly different manner because, look, these 2 trainers are very good at the game. That's just, you know, make that incredibly clear. And so both of them are sort of really familiar with these meta lineups and know how to play around them. And so I think maybe have to do something a little bit different.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think this game number 2 is going to look significantly different. I think Lantern lead for JW Naldo could look pretty safe, but maybe that forces a Lickitung lead out of Tauntaun here. So maybe you get really bold and go with the Reggie lead. So I think you want to protect yourself from Lickitung a little bit, because I feel like Tauntaun's going to put the Gligar in the back, because Gligar is going to be really strong against that Registeel in the back. So I think we could just get into game number 2, but I'm definitely expecting either a Lickitung lead from Tauntaun. Oh, there it is. There's the Lickitung lead from Tauntaun there. And bringing the Dragonair, the same exact team for JW Naldo in this game number 2.
Yeah, exactly right. Really just trying to run it back. Thought that he could see a win con in the distance, but we'll see how it plays out this time. The Dragonair sort of going in with that Shadow Body Slam, which really does add up onto the Lickitung, and trying to catch a Body Slam potentially as well onto the Lantern. Unfortunately, not taking place, which means that this Lickitung is going to quite comfortably be able to throw these Power Whips onto the Lantern. I'm not 100% sure about this play, because there's a lot of pressure going on. Actually, we're going to see the swap out after that Power Whip into the Medicham. This Lantern having some energy here. Lots of neutral swaps here, Butters. I mean, there's energy all over the place. There's little bits of health all over the place. This can go in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, Tauntaun just went for the trio, the Medi, Licky, Lantern that's just so strong right now. And JW Naldo just swapped in the Lantern, like you mentioned, trying to catch the Body Slam. But even if you have to Protect Shield Power Whip, fine. You waste all that energy on Lickitung and you use your Protect Shield on your best Pokemon. So it's not the end of the world either. So now you can even double Protect Shield your best Pokemon, but it looks like he did not want to do that. And I think Tauntaun will secure the knockout with this Dynamic Punch. No, actually does it, but the Surf doesn't get there.
Even better, getting 2 spark advantage as well. But now Dragonair comes in. These Ice Punches are going to be putting a lot of pressure onto Dragonair. We're seeing another shield come out from JW Naldo to try and protect this Dragonair. There's still that 1 shield left on the other side, and unfortunately wouldn't be able to get a full Dragon Breath down, and just going to let this Ice Punch actually come through, potentially leaving this Medicham for a little bit of farm on the Registeel in the back. Another attempt at a lock on down, but switch timer was up, which means Lantern's here. There's still that Lickitung in the back as well. So there's sort of a lot of work that this Registeel has to do for JW Naldo to sort of try and take this matchup out. And I have a feeling, Butters, we're going to see a Zap Cannon, and we're not going to see a debuff. 1 in 3 chance means nothing in these matchups, because there's a 100% chance that this does not debuff.
Well, it'd be fitting if it does debuff, because in the one matchup that it literally doesn't matter, because this Registeel is going to lose no matter what. Now he gets the debuff. Like when he actually could have won the battle with the debuff, he doesn't get it. But now when it's over, there's 3 Pokemon remaining. The Registeel finally decides to work for him and get that debuff. So it must be incredibly frustrating for JW Naldo's side.
Look, I mean, RNG, famously a massive part of the Pokemon franchise, and no debuff on that one. So at least he got to use up one of his bad luck debuffs on the Zap Cannon there. Yeah. But still, as you mentioned, that Registeel was not going anywhere, which means Tauntaun was sort of able to quite comfortably sort of land in that game number 3 game number 2 as well, pushing it into game 3. So he's taken the match, but there's still a game left to play. So JW Naldo can still get on the board. But again, I feel like the Dragonair isn't quite doing the work that he sort of wants it to do. I feel like a pivot might be necessary.
I feel like wdage kind of woke up Tauntaun. It was like, you don't need to just roll with your best Pokemon. He didn't even bring Gligar in that game number 2. He's now switching up his strategy, just bringing Medi, Lickitung, Lantern, and expecting a similar strategy from JW Naldo. And is this the wake-up call for JW Naldo now? Dragonair is not that strong against a Medi, Lickitung core. Yes, it's good if you land against that Lantern, but what are the odds of that happening? So do you now switch up to do something similar, bring the Lantern, Lickitung, and then maybe you bring the Registeel, so you're able to protect yourself from the Lickitung counters, which would probably be the Mandibuzz, or I guess the Medicham would also counter Lickitung, which Registeel would not be good against. And we have to remember, it is Dynamic Punch Medicham. So now that I'm thinking about that, you really could throw that out the window. Maybe you go for Frostlass, which you've been wanting to see, because that can still do just fine against a Medicham and Lickitung core, and specifically against Dynamic Punch, Ice Punch Medicham. It's so strong. So I have to agree with your earlier call. Frostlass might be looking pretty strong in this game number 3, but whatever JW Naldo wants to do, I think he shouldn't run back the same team of 3. I think he should have the wake up call and switch it up a little bit.
Yeah, look, we'll just have to wait and see. I'm very hopeful, fingers crossed for this Frostlass, and straight in the lead. Let's go.
Oh, there it is.
Into the Metacham as well, and so we see a quick swap into Lickitung, but there's no Registeel this time, which JW Naldo would absolutely love. So actually stays in with the Frostlass to get a little bit of chip with this Avalanche. But then in the back, I mean, there's no...
And then the dip into Lickitung, I think. Yep, there it is.
And comfortable now because you can tank this energy from the Lickitung and you're sort of confident that you'll be able to win this matchup as long as you sort of finish it up before the switch timers finish up first. And so really puts JW in quite a strong position this time with that Frostlass sort of waiting out in the back as well. The Lantern too. We can see that there's that Lantern on Tonton's back end as well. So as long as JW can sort of keep this momentum up, I feel like he could be in quite a strong position here as long as he doesn't let Tonton just farm up too much energy, I suppose, because that energy advantage, while it works really well in Frostlass's favor, if it's on the other side, it can work quite well against Frostlass as well. So we'll have to wait and see how this goes as we finally sort of head towards the end of this Lickitung mirror match that we'll eventually get through. But we're close.
Lickitung Say Swap is so strong, but crazy enough, the best answer to Lickitung Say Swap is almost always Lickitung. As you see Lickitung, the key factor is all you need to do is chip and dip. If you chip a Lickitung and then counter swap with your own Lickitung, it hard counters that Lickitung. There's no way the other Lickitung can make up that difference of that chip and then the dip. And you can almost always outpace the Lickitung swapping into you. So that was perfect execution from JW Naldo there. And the Metacham has some energy. It's going to instant pivot into Lantern. It's going to be met by the own Lantern, but decides that JW Naldo wants to throw a parting Shadow Ball to either get some damage off or get a Protect Shield, and no Protect Shield. So another chip and dip from JW Naldo to match it with the same exact Pokemon in the back.
Oh, but he's not dipping.
Oh, he actually doesn't even match it. He's staying in.
Okay, the Frostlass going to stay in, looking in the face of this Thunderbolt. Does want to shield up. Maybe wants to get to another charge move to keep in the bank for the Metacham that might come out later. Or, just getting that extra energy ready to go because Metacham does have some energy as well. So now swapping into the Lantern. The opposing Lantern is quite low, but it's not quite the same as the Lickitung matchup where it is just a hard counter because those Thunderbolts do sort of hurt, and so it can sort of change a little bit depending on sort of some level of shielding or baiting, and it goes straight for the Surf here, but Tonton's Lantern is quite low, not quite low enough that KOs, but just able to get that extra spark farm, so works even better. But now it is a question of, can this Metacham beat the Lantern with energy still in the bank to take on the Frostlass in the back, or can JW?
The crazy thing is, I can't believe that JW Naldo put his own Frostlass in range of Dynamic Punch. I don't know if that's going to come to bite him in the end, but now the fact that it's in range, there's no Protect Shields remaining. Frostlass, I think, is one Powder Snow away from that Avalanche. There it is. And now you throw the Dynamic Punch. This Dynamic Punch is going to land into the Frostlass. It's only single resisted. It's same type attack bonus. It's a strong attack. It secures the knockout. And now is the Surf going to be available first, though? Yes, the Surf is. No. Wait a second. It looked like that Surf was available, but was there a Protect Shield remaining on Tonton's side?
Yeah. I think that Tonton still sort of had that shield ready to go, and so would have needed that extra push. Needed the Surf plus an Avalanche to sort of beat the shield and then also beat the Metacham. So really, really unfortunate finish for JW Naldo. You know, the idea was there, the wanting to first chip and dip the Lantern, but then also recognizing, okay, that Metacham has energy. I could be in some trouble a little bit later. So try to go for the thought of, I want to get a little bit of energy here so that I can try and come back later, but didn't want to go all the way up to the charge move. And so it sort of meant that Metacham was just in a really strong position to have energy, to have a charge move, and to be ready to take on that Frostlass. And there just wasn't enough juice in the tank between the Lantern and the Frostlass. One of them would have been able to get to a move, but weren't going to see two.
Yeah, you know I love my Brasileiros, but I think he dropped the ball a little bit in that in game there because the only way that you lose the game is that I feel like, so you're going to be behind energy against the opposing Lantern because the opposing Lantern swapped first. So it looked like he was going to try to chip a dip to try to get some advantage for his own Lantern. So the only way you're going to lose the game is if the other Lantern in front of you so dominates your Lantern that it's going to be able to put a ton of pressure onto your Frostlass. With a 1 or 2 spark advantage, I don't think that's happening. It's going to be a very close matchup, and your Frostlass can finish it off at the end. And then if you're able to chip and dip but be out of dynamic punch range, there's also not many lose conditions because now you have the advantage against Lantern, even if now your Lantern beats their Lantern and then their Medicham counters you down for momentum, you can soak that momentum because you resist everything on Frostlass. I feel like the only lose condition was to stay in too long on the Frostlass and get in range and not be able to soak momentum on the Medicham. And that's exactly what happened in that end game there.
Yeah, it was sort of ended up being the worst path of sort of everything went a little bit wrong. So it ended up that Frostlass didn't quite have the energy, didn't quite have the health. And so was sort of stuck there in a bit of a losing matchup. But it does mean that Tonton is able to get the first 3-0 of the tournament, sort of, I guess, showing JW Naldo, hey, I'm the Shadow Dragoner expert. If you're going to try and use that against me, I know exactly how it works and exactly where the weaknesses are. A little bit of a throwback to your comment on wdage a little bit earlier about running the team to understand the weaknesses of the team. Well, Tonton has already been there. He understands the weaknesses of the Dragonair and was able to sort of exploit that to the fullest there up against JW Naldo, which so it means here sort of on the table, like Tonton has come away with 4 battle wins here, which sort of like averages out to a 2-1, 2-1. So I think that he's in a really strong position to sort of take this out. JW Naldo is going to have to perform really well up against wdage to sort of make sure that he's still in this competition. And so I think that's actually what we're going to be going into next. So JW Naldo sort of coming in here with the tournament on the line, really trying to fight his way back, while wdage is just trying to lock in a sort of a dominant position to be in this tournament to really face off against Tonton. But here we are.
Well, a key factor is also if wdage wins this series, he has the head-to-head against Tonton. So Tonton is ahead because of that 3-0. But if wdage is able to secure a good amount of points, maybe keep going 2-1, like you said, Tonton kind of averaged out into 2-1s. Then wdage wins that head-to-head. So JWNaldo is not only keeping his tournament hopes alive, but he's also trying to defeat wdage, which is trying to hold on to that points advantage for that head-to-head. So, I mean, I guess he'd be helping out the trainer that just 3-0'd him, but still wants to keep his tournament life on the line here as we get into this matchup. So there's a lot of factors going into these small clashes of champions.
Yeah, look, TontonBatteuse definitely on the sidelines cheering on JW Naldo in this circumstance.
Yeah.
I mean, also in the sense that, Tonton, if it was a situation where Tonton and JW Naldo were tied at the top, then TontonBatteuse would have the head-to-head tiebreaker for that tie as well. So very much will be pushing hard for JW Naldo to sort of reverse the score and go 3-0 towards wdage. But, it's going to be a tough call because definitely a very strong trainer to sort of be that a little bit of a final boss for JW Naldo. So we've got the teams here. We've seen both of these trainers battle through the tournament. Again, this time we've got the Psychic Medicham out on the field with that Frostlass v Frostlass action this time. So this is a sort of Frostlass versus Frostlass, a matchup that has been very common through the entire history of the Sylph Arena. And so there's always the chances that we could see that coming through now, because sort of looking at the two teams, I feel like there is a lot of strength in the Frostlass for sure. There's sort of one Pokemon on wdage's side that can really hamper its day, and that is the Umbreon. Umbreon, a very powerful Pokemon against Frostlass, as we all know. Dark type into that Ghost type, always going to be quite a nice position to be in. And at the same time, like Umbreon, we're seeing a Defense Deoxys over on JW Naldo's side. So like you're that extra little bit stronger against something like a Medicham. So I feel like Umbreon, excuse me, is looking really quite powerful up against JW Naldo's side, as long as you sort of build out some support against the Registeel in particular. So potentially that's reason to bring in that Gligar, as we were sort of seeing a little bit earlier, as that major Registeel counter. But again, that sort of then comes back around to, so then do we see the Frostlass sort of coming in from the JW Naldo side, and then you've sort of just got that cycle there with the Umbreon, Frostlass, Registeel, Gligar, all sort of swimming around and trying to get in the right position. But it is what it is.
Yeah, it's hard because also I feel like you could bait out the Registeel with your own Frostlass if you're wdage, because Frostlass even looks pretty strong against JW Naldo's side. It really only has to worry about Registeel and Lantern. And if you bait out the Registeel, then the Umbreon is going to be very, very safe in the back, maybe, or you can even have that in the lead. The problem is JW Naldo has been showing that he likes to run a certain team of three, and that's Lantern, Registeel, and Dragonair. So you might just like swap this Frostlass and then bait out the Lantern, and then there's still a Registeel in the back for that Umbreon. So JW Naldo has actually been sticking to his favorite Pokemon, his favorite lines a little bit more. So I expect some similar action here because there isn't a huge counter for Lantern and Registeel core. I mean, your best answer is that Gligar, but Gligar will beat Lantern, but it's not, guaranteed, especially if there's more energy on the Lantern side. So I have to agree with you. I think Gligar's looking really strong. So maybe instead of that Shadow Dragonair, we might see some Frostlass action, or, we might just see that same team of three, that Dragonair, Lickitung, and Lantern. It looks strong on paper. I'm not going to lie. I don't disagree with the reason JW Naldo is running it, because on paper it protects the team's weaknesses quite well.
Yeah, and it is a strong team. And in these sort of situations where you're in the Open Great League, you're building these balanced teams, there's a lot of balanced lines of three that you can run. And so a lot of the time, there's a lot of different ways that you can go about it to sort of build a team that can be very strong. And so really, JW Naldo, he might go for the safe team. He might go for a team that is a little bit more sort of manufactured for the wdage lineup. But we will just sort of have to wait and see how it goes. Sort of jumping into the game one here in the fourth set of the Clash of the Champions International, with a Gligar straight into the Registeel wdage, sitting in the sidelines cheering. And we can see that Umbreon in wdage's back is going to be quite strong up against JW Naldo's backline as well. So wdage starting off this game incredibly powerfully, and straight away actually forcing a shield out of the Registeel here.
Yeah. And the defense form Deoxys just has really nowhere to go against this team. I mean, it's not great against Gligar. It's not good against Umbreon in the back, and it's not good against Frostlass. So that's going to be a key factor, is now you're down Protect Shields if you are JW Naldo. And plus, your defense form Deoxys has nowhere to go. Finally throwing it out there, but it's going to be met by the Umbreon here. And this is just fantastic for the Umbreon. Umbreon should be able to shore up this matchup and still be healthy enough to come out with either a decent amount of health or a decent amount of energy.
Yeah, there's not a lot of reasons for JW Naldo to shield in this matchup, especially after already burning one of his only two Protect Shields in that first matchup with Registeel. So I think this Deoxys is going to be going down quite quickly, and this counter damage, it will start to add up, and it will see, we won't see another Thunderbolt coming through. This Foul Play will be enough to sort of KO this defense Deoxys, and potentially now we sort of have to see that Registeel come back in. We're not going to see the Frostlass come out into an Umbreon and just go straight for the Zap Cannon, actually, to try and take this Umbreon out. We did see a debuff a little earlier in this matchup, again, in a sort of wasted scenario, you could say, and this is another one of those scenarios. Oh, yeah, this could actually be key, because now this Foul Play is going to do a little bit less damage, so Registeel will be a little bit healthier than it was going to be beforehand. We actually see the Gligar come straight back in, and the Digs are going to hurt, but like, Dig isn't a one-hit KO move on a Registeel, so does actually survive here and then swap into the Frostlass for a potential Frostlass versus Frostlass mirror that could be coming up. But there's a shield advantage on one side, and it is not JW Naldo's. This Dig is going to hurt as well, but we'll see if the energy advantage on this Frostlass can sort of come in clutch, because there's a full farm down here, Butters.
Yeah, I the only thing I worry about once again is just taking all that fast attack pressure like we saw earlier on. It's gonna be able to now it makes up for that shield that it lost, right? Because it is at a Shadow Ball worth of energy. So it's basically acts as like it's two shields versus two shields in this back line here. So
Oh.
this is actually pretty neutral in this back as long as JW Naldo can endure enough powder snow and you get the protect shield. So now you are technically ahead one powder snow on energy and the shields are even. Can you get the back-to-back baits? You can. And now you need to be able to get to the shadow ball. Can you hold on long enough to get to the shadow ball? That is the question.
Oh, I'm not sure if he can. He's really getting so low here, shielding up the avalanche here as well. You shielded up two baits. You'll have to shield this one, but I'm not sure if he can actually get to the shadow ball. So he
Oh, and the swap on the avalanche though.
Oh my gosh. Okay, Register is going to go down here, but this Frostlass still needs to get up to the Shadow Ball. And there's an Umbreon in the back as well. So he goes for the one powder snow. There's the throw
There's
into
the swap
Umbreon.
into the Umbreon, but JW Naldo registers it patient, has the Shadow Ball banked, and out of nowhere, JW Naldo takes this game #1 to keep his tournament dreams alive with a knockout into Frostlass.
Wow, what a game. What an absolute smasher. I mean, just JW Naldo staying so patient, knowing that Umbreon was coming in, knowing that he had to get the Shadow Ball onto the Frostlass. And there was probably like, one fast move incorrect anywhere could have cost that game for JW Naldo, but able to play it perfectly and get that win up against wdage there in such a close fashion. I mean, wdage was probably looking pretty happy going into that end game, but man, JW Naldo pulling it out, huge.
Yeah, that was insane. Getting the double bait on the Frostlass, able to swap on the Avalanche into your own Registeel. Well played by JW Naldo and got a point that he desperately needed in this tournament to stay around. And now the pressure's on wdage, because if wdage wants to win the whole thing and prove that he is one of the top players, if not the top player in the world, you have to take out all these other international champions. And to do that, you need points here because Tonton is already has 4 points. You're only at 2. So you only have 2 matchups remaining and you need to be able to get some points on the board.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I mean, look, JW Naldo is sort of in the hot seat a little bit. wdage can be a little bit more comfortable. He was sort of like, okay, I can readjust here. I've got time to sort of get these wins for this competition. Whereas JW Naldo, his just foot is on the gas for pushing for that 3-0 to try and take out wdage, which again, wdage, you keep saying it, wdage potentially potentially the best player in the world in Pokemon Go PvP. And so JW Naldo starting off this set with a win up against wdage can be absolutely massive for a momentum push and to really try and get through wdage's lineup. And again, this win coming after like that game started off with a Gligar into the Registeel and just having to eat a dig there, and JW Naldo still able to come out of that one ahead. So really heads up stuff, and really just again goes to show why JW Naldo was able to conquer LAIC. He's an incredibly strong battler and definitely a one to look out for because he's coming in pretty strong here. And so it will now mean that going into game 2, wdage is actually the person on the back seat, which is not something you see very often, having to see a wdage comeback. But, we'll just have to just jump in and sort of take a look at where he tries to go with it. Do we see another Gligar into Registeel? No, it's much worse. It's Umbreon into Registeel. JW Naldo actually getting the lead scenario here and a swap into Frostlass. Not the best Registeel counter, I can't say.
It's not terrible. I think Arrow is one trainer that thinks that Frostlass actually beats Registeel because, I mean, it's just you do a decent amount of damage with that Shadow Ball, as you can see, and the Zap Cannons have been pretty inconsistent from JW Naldo. So we'll see if he actually gets the debuff on to Frostlass. And yes, he did get the debuff, but instantly pivoted into Shadow Dragonair now that these Powder Snows are not doing as much damage. But you are 1 powder snow ahead in terms of timing if you are wdage. So you're going to continue to outpace.
Yeah, this could be the first time that JW Naldo is sort of throwing a Zap Cannon debuff that could be incredibly consequential because this Dragonair is just able to take so much and Dragon Breaths the Frostlass all the way down. And so now this Umbreon comes in and has to eat some energy from this Dragonair. And look, if you need a Pokemon to soak up some charge moves, Umbreon is definitely your guy, and these Body Slams are really going to start to whittle it down alongside the Dragon Breaths, but a single Foul Play from the Umbreon is going to be doing a lot of damage to a Shadow Dragonair, so it's just about getting there, getting it through, but we could also see JW Naldo sort of go the way where he sort of wants to burn the shield on the Dragonair, but no, we're going to let the Foul Play come through, let the Dragonair go down, recognize that we have an Umbreon here on low health, and that, I mean, you don't really want to go for the Frostlass, but you can go for the Registeel here to try and KO, but instead we have a swap into Medicham, which means we're in a Medicham versus Frostlass here, and this Medicham does have Psychic and the slightest of energy advantages, so really huge call on the Psychic there. That was absolutely necessary, and now it is going to be a little bit of a question mark. Do you go for another Avalanche bait after all of those baits in the last game, or do you go straight for it? And wdage has to make the call.
Yeah, well, I think here comes the Protect Shield actually onto the Medicham. You have to win this game with knocking out Registeel. So your best chance to knock out Registeel is with Medicham, but this Medicham is going to get knocked out, and you're actually undercharging on this Psychic on purpose, trying to get a Snarl down onto the Frostlass. I believe the timers will be back up, though, so I'm not sure how much of this undercharge is going to help with dodge. And another undercharge from JW Naldo trying to get a Powder Snow down, but now the timer is not up yet. So you're going to be able to try to get the Snarl down, and it just didn't look like the undercharge was perfect enough because JW Naldo is able to hold on and finish off this game. I think this is a knockout with the Avalanche.
Yeah, there it goes. Frostlass able to push JW Naldo into the 2-0 against wdage. He's fighting back. He was like, I need this matchup, and he is absolutely dominating. He's doing incredibly well. Like, this is huge. Like, it's such good play from JW Naldo as well. I mean, this time we actually got to see what he was like with a good lead matchup. You know, we saw him lead with the bad lead. He's now won with the good lead. Registeel into the Umbreon and just sort of kept just nipping at wdage's heels. Like, wdage just couldn't get away the entire game. It was always sort of just trying to figure out how to get back on top. But wdage, JW Naldo just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and finally that Registeel was just like standing in the background going, you've still got to get through me if you want to close out this game. And wdage just wasn't able to generate enough juice to be able to push through not only the Frostlass but then also the Registeel as well, although it would have been closer if he did get that perfect undercharge, but even then I'm not sure if he would have quite seen a KO from that Umbreon.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, suddenly wdage, it was JW Naldo with his tournament hopes on the line. Now it's wdage with his tournament hopes on the line. He needs to get a point here if he wants to win this entire thing. So it's a crucial game number 3. And I think JW Naldo is going to reach for something like a Frostlass in the lead. That's my prediction going in this game number 3. And I don't know what the heck wdage is going to do.
Yeah, you've really sort of got to get like, you almost have to get a little bit lucky, like a little bit. I guess you just want to avoid the really, again, sort of getting hard countered in many senses. I mean, I think wdage is someone that can win his way out of a lot of neutral scenarios. But as soon as you sort of get in some bad matchup situations, it can be really difficult for anyone to be able to fight their way out. And JW Naldo definitely did his absolute best to keep wdage on that sort of back burner. Like, there is nothing you can do here. And now is sort of poised to try and like flip back that Tonton's 3-0 against him to a 3-0 from JW Naldo. So really trying to get those points back on the board as well. But wdage, this is sort of his shot to try and still get that point onto the board, onto the scoreboard, to try and level out his competition here. So I don't know. We'll just have to jump into game number 3 of wdage versus JW Naldo, NAIC versus LAIC, the battle of the Americas, and see what we can do here with Medicham.
Well, technically, South America. I knew wdage was going to lead Medicham. That's why I was thinking you probably should lead Frostlass on JW Naldo's side, just because Medicham is so safe against pretty much everything JW Naldo's been bringing. If it's a lead Shadow Dragonair, it's safe. If it's a lead Registeel, it's safe. So great progression of a series by wdage, and I feel like Frostlass probably would have been a great answer from JW Naldo, but this Lantern is just fine too. It's neutral and probably neutral against everything. And you're not going to see a superior. So this is not bad. You just don't have an answer for Umbreon in the back, Steve. That's what it's going to come down to. There's nothing to really handle that on the back end side for JW Naldo's team.
Yeah, not only are you in a really bad spot with that Frostlass against Umbreon, but Lickitung is so neutral and generally is sort of not looking great in that matchup in the end of things. So these Psychics going to add up onto the Lantern, and Lantern will finally get KO'd, and now coming in for the Frostlass advantage here. And unfortunately being pushed straight away with this Umbreon, but it looks like no, going to stay in. And again, JW Naldo sort of staying in to get that chip and dip potentially, because this will definitely help Lickitung to make this matchup a little bit better than it would be otherwise. That Avalanche bringing it down not quite to the yellow, probably about a little bit more than a third of its health, but actually staying in and letting it, the foul play come through. So really putting a lot of his hopes, I guess, onto that Lickitung in the back, and that this Frostlass with, again, not quite a charge move, but needed to swap out there to catch the foul play into the Lickitung. But he's almost got a charge move on that Frostlass that might come in handy a little bit later as well.
Yeah, the problem is it's just so hard to finish off Umbreon. I mean, you just really need to have something that can handle it. And I guess Frostlass, if you had 2 Protect Shields, can do a lot of damage against Umbreon just because it's doing neutral. But Lickitung just does nothing. It's going to take 3 body slams at least to knock out this Umbreon here. Here comes the first one. The second one is not going to knock out. And look how low Lickitung is at this point. And you know how low your own Frostlass is. And then you got the bulk of Lantern just hanging out in the back. I guess your best play for JW Naldo is trying to reach for the Power Whip, because I don't think the body slam is going to knock out.
Yeah, and to be able to get to that power whip, like, you're really going to need as much energy as possible. There's the Discord message as well, but we've got the power whip coming through. This speed is chief guy. Get him out of here. We've got the shield coming up from the Lantern, and yeah, that was really, JW Naldo needed that power whip to go through, but even then, he was in a pretty dire situation. Still going to go for the body slam here, just in case, wdage accidentally drops his phone on the ground and then never picks it up, and maybe he can tap his way to a victory, but otherwise, this Shadow Ball isn't going to change the difference, I don't think.
Yeah, you're still out of range of Shadow Ball if you're wdage. This is not even going to knock out the Lantern, because Lantern is just so bulky, and you're probably just going to be able to outpace on the Spark, but you could just double surf if you wanted. JW Naldo knows it's over, but he did what he wanted to do. He was able to take a 2-1 lead over wdage, but wdage did what he desperately needed to do. He picked up a point moving on in this series. So I believe wdage has a total of 3 points now, but it's JW Naldo that takes 2-1. Yeah, as we go to this amazing graphic, and if you look closely, every 60 seconds, one of the trainers blinks. I won't tell you which one of the trainer. It switches every time, but just Steve worked really hard on this, so watch out for the blinks.
Yeah, I appreciate the love, because yeah, it's, you'll have to pay a lot of attention to it. I know that you might get a little bit stunned, a little bit distracted by some other parts of the really high-tech graphic, but hey, that's just what we get here. But regardless, we're at this spot where it's sort of even all around. We've got wdage on 3 wins. Yakovich only played 1 game so far, but he's got that 1 win on the board. JW Naldo finishing up his tournament with 4, and Tonton also sitting there on 4. So there's sort of a situation here where essentially there's a lot of trainers that could win here. Unfortunately, JW Naldo, at the very least, by tying TontonBatteuse, he would lose the head-to-head tiebreaker against Tonton. So unfortunately, JW Naldo, who's been knocked out of the running here, but it still leaves 3 trainers that are all sort of vying for that victory with only 2 matches left to go. So there's sort of a lot on the line, and I believe that next up, we will be seeing Yakovich versus Tonton as well. So Yako looking to put some points on the board, and Tonton looking to just extend his lead out there, because I mean, if you sort of look at the points, like if Tonton was able to get a 3-0 here, he's essentially locked in the victory, because wdage wouldn't be able to catch up, and Yakovich would have been put well behind as well, so wouldn't be able to catch up. So Tonton just needs to do what he did before and get a 3-0, and then
really, I mean, if Yakovich is able to get points, get at least a 2-1, it really makes it a 3-man race. If he's able to do that, all 3 of the trainers are in it remaining. But if Tauntaun's able to pick up at least a 2-1, it's going to be really tough for the other two trainers. So this is a crucial pivot of the matchups here. So I think we should get into it because this is the one that changes everything.
Whoop. We've got battles on the screen. This was the last round. These aren't the new battles.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, so we're not getting... Or actually... Oh, maybe... Oh, actually, it was these battles. So slight spoiler, but regardless, we've got the new teams here for the match that changes everything. We've got Yakovich. We haven't seen him for a while. We do have that psychic meta cham. We've got the Superior as well, and still Umbreon and Frostas sticking around as well. The hard meta team up against Tonton's team running that Shadow Alola Ninetales, who we didn't see much of anything at all after he sort of lost a few times to wdage. He sort of kept it out of bounds for a little bit, but this could be a team that we see it come in again, because we do see the Metacham and the Umbreon both on Yakobevich's side. But as we sort of talked about earlier, it is open team sheet. Yakovich is going into this knowing that this is a Shadow Charm Alola Ninetales, and may sort of decide here that it is worth leaving potentially the Umbreon at home going to this. And I think that's sort of a topic of conversation that was sort of coming up when we saw an Umbreon try and take on Tonton earlier as well. When wdage didn't run his Umbreon, and he never did. And I think that might have to be the case here again, Butters.
Yeah, I mean, I have two thoughts going into it. First of all, a little spoiler thought is I can't believe he brought Superior lead into a double flying team, because Tauntaun's running double flyers and he led Superior. So that's bold of Yakovich. And that brings me to my second point is wdage played that series against Tauntaun really boldly in terms of team compositions and the way he was able to powder snow down that Shadow Alola Ninetales to sweep in the back, just making bold decision after bold decision. And I feel like that's what you need to do when you're technically at a team composition disadvantage, because there's that Shadow Alola Ninetales that just really has no answer, no check. So will Tauntaun be able to put the right pressure points and get Yakovich to, get into a chokehold or sleeper hold there with this team composition, or will he be able to just break out with unconventional style just like wdage did? And it's a little spoiler, but it seems so far Yakovich is willing to be bold by running a Superior into a double flying team. So I feel like and this is the matchup. It's either a 3-man race or Tauntaun pretty much wins it. So I can't wait to see these battles.
Yeah, let's get into what we've seen just before the Superior going into the Shadow Alola Ninetales. One of the better positions for it to be in with that double flyer lineup, and you can see there is only one on Tonton's side, but going to try and burn up these shields from Tonton, as we've seen before in the earlier matches against wdage. We've got the Aerial Ace getting that first shield from Alola Ninetales, and won't actually be able to get to a second charge move before Alola Ninetales can get to this Ice Weather Ball, so really forcing this first shield from Yako out as well. And so it is going to be just a question of, does Tonton go for the 2-shield strategy here, or is he sort of happy to just use it as sort of a more regular Pokemon, or is he going to call the Aerial Ace? I will just have to wait and see.
These Aerial Acers are so strong, as he does Protect Shield the Fringe Blade. These Aerial Acers are so good against these Charmers because it's such low energy. You can bait, and you don't want to take a Frenzy Plant, so you're able to bait those Aerial Aces, get to the Frenzy Plant. Now you have a Protect Shield advantage against the Lickitung. Lickitung is seen as a Lantern counter, but if you Protect Shield the Power Whip, it's not a Lantern counter. So now this Lantern has a ton of momentum, of course, against the one team without a Grass or Dragon type to keep it in line. So far, Yakovich, I feel like, has been playing this opening matchup extremely well.
Yeah, even with the wacky Superior lead, we've got a lot of push through coming from Yako here. The Lickitung getting close to that Power Whip, so now Yakovich going to be throwing the Thunderbolt to try and to get that thing off the board. And again, with no Grass type to really punish this Lantern. Actually does hang on barely to get one extra Body Slam, but Lantern will still survive, and so we'll still be seeing some other Pokemon coming onto the field. So it does mean that Shadow A9 will have a little bit of an easier time to just charm this thing down, if that's the way that Tonton wants to go. Because, I mean, Mandibuzz could be a little bit scary. Now we're in some trouble here, Butters.
Well, getting Getting to that body slam was huge though, because now you can maybe snarl down before this lantern, and it doesn't look like you want to let the snarl down happen. So this get to a dark pulse plus aerial ace before there is a double avalanche available. So you have to be able to outpace, because you're not going to be able to snarl down. So can this Mandibuzz do the impossible and get the snarl to aerial ace before the double avalanche is available for Yakovich?
Yeah, the race is very much on, but even if we get another Dark Pulse through, actually, Aerial Ace will be enough here. Frostlass will go down, but there's still help on the other two Pokemon in the back. That Lantern is still just sitting around, ready to throw a couple sparks here. There's 1 spark and 2 sparks and 3 sparks will do it, and Mandibuzz does go down, and Yakovich putting the first win on the board and pushing us towards that sort of 3-man race scenario where everyone is still sort of ready to go. Like Tonton, Tonton is unable to just hard win here. He needed the 3-0 to just win after this set outright. Doesn't matter the result between wdage versus Yakovich. Now, at the very least, that result will matter. So it's going to be a question of whether Tonton can push it back and make it very much like wdage needs to do incredibly well here. Or if Yakovich can just keep pushing and weaken down Tonton's position. But the superior play apparently works against the double flyers.
Well, I think it's a great strategy upon revisiting how these matchups would work, because I don't know how you really deal with Lantern and Frostlass core if you are Tauntaun. And the best way to deal with that core is by bringing in your Lickitung. That's literally, I think, the only option is if you run Lickitung or Lantern. That's only 2 Pokemon that can beat Frostlass and Lantern core from Yakovich. So Superior actually makes a lot of sense, because Superior can beat Lickitung neutrally and it beats Lantern. So even though there's double flyers, it's quite risky if you match up against a flyer with Superior. It becomes pretty RPS. I do like the strategy because there's only one way to address your strongest core, and those are with using Pokemon that lose the Superior.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, and sort of something that really sets Yakovich up for that sort of ability to play out of potentially, unfortunate circumstances, which in Pokemon Go PvP is a very common theme, and you get stuck in a lot of neutral spots. The worst thing in the world is getting stuck in a matchup that you can do nothing about. And so it's about having these options, these abilities to sort of play out of things, and ability to know what your opponent is probably thinking so that you can prepare for those scenarios, and so that you're ready for any lineup that might sort of come your way. And even with the Lantern in the lead, the Superior in the lead, sorry, the only thing that you're sort of maybe hoping not for is some sort of ABA flyer strat that could really put you in some real hot water. But because it's unbalanced, it's not very likely quite often. So you can be a little bit safe as long as you don't rely on it a little bit too hard. But we will have to go into game number 2. Can Yakovich sort of keep on push out Tonton's ability to sort of take it all back? Or will we see Tonton return, and we'll have to wait and see with a Superior coming again with the Lantern lead this time. And again, that Shadow A9 in the back, the Mandibuzz singing in the back for Tonton. So this is looking a very similar game. It looks like
it's literally the situation of you brought your best core, you brought your Lantern Frostlass. Oh, if you brought your best core of Frostlass Lantern, if you're Yakovich, and then you brought your core breaker from the other side, or to beat the core breaker from the other side, you're Superior, and it worked once again. And guess what? It's the same backline core from Tauntaun here. And hey, Tauntaun has done this well so far with running those core Pokemon over and over again. So running the same thing here, but it's going to be losing alignment against this Superior. If the Superior gets no Protect Shield, there is no Protect Shield. So now you lose the alignment. So now your Mandibuzz is really going to have no place to go against the Lantern, but you still have double Protect Shield Shadow Alola Ninetales.
Yeah, here we go again. But again, at the same time, like as much as you're sort of being able to avoid that Lantern onto the Mandibuzz, Lantern is that Pokemon that can really just push Alolan Ninetales to its limits. Did swap into a Charm this time, so potentially may not quite be able to survive and push through all the way. But regardless, we're going to see the first Ice Weather Ball coming through from Alolan Ninetales, and as much as it feels bad to have to shield an Ice Weather Ball on a Water type, you sort of do have to here because the Charms are just doing so much damage that you need that health to survive. And so actually going to let the Surf go onto the Alolan Ninetales, wants to keep a shield for the Mandibuzz in the back, and now that Lantern is low, is looking to go for a Dark Pulse to try and KO, but there's still a shield on Yakko's side, so he has to not only get to a charge move to take the shield, but then also needs to get to a shield to take it out. But does make a little bit of a call on the Surf coming through here. But we can both see here that there is also a full health Frostlass hanging out in the back as well, and just for good measure, catching the Aerial Ace onto Superior.
Yeah, forced to throw energy because, I mean, you're at 100 energy. At some point, the Superior will just get the Aerial Aces. But the problem is, if you're Mandibuzz, you're already in range of a Avalanche. You don't Protect Shield this because Surf is going to do less than an Avalanche will, but you might just lose the fast attack pressure. You're going to be able to get this Snarl down, but you know that one Dark Pulse doesn't knock out, and you gave up an Aerial Ace. Now you gave up that energy, so now you have to Dark Pulse plus Snarl down and Frostlass before that Frostlass just powder snows you down. Mandibuzz against the world just wasn't enough here.
Yeah, look, it was going to be a tough race to run. I think Mandibuzz was sort of left with a lot of work to do. Some of the other Pokemon might have sort of just shoved their workload onto Mandibuzz's desk and said, you can handle it, right? And unfortunately, the answer here was a resounding and not quite. So it means that Yakovich pushing back not only his position in the race, but also just shoring up wdage's chances by weakening down Tonton, who is now 0-2 in this tournament. And there's only sort of one matchup sort of left to go here, and Yakovich is playing really well, especially with that Superior, sort of able to lock in a lot of work, which, again, you could very easily sort of doubt it if you just look on the surface level at that 2 flyers, but by sort of locking into the sort of thinking about this Pokemon counters, this Pokemon counters, this Pokemon counters, this Pokemon, Superior really just unlocks its potential. And so Yakovich is doing a lot of really good work over this Pokemon here, and Tonton, again, he did try something a little bit different this time, in that he went for the 1 shield Shadow Alolan Ninetales to try and make the Mandibuzz work, but unfortunately, this wasn't the time that was going to come through. But it does mean that he might think about going for a slightly different play here, because I don't think Shadow A9 is doing, it's not the dominant Pokemon that is winning, demolishing matchups that but it even was a little bit earlier against wdage. Even though it wasn't working, it wasn't getting wins, it felt like it was still doing its job in being sort of able to knock these Pokemon out to sort of ready up the rest of your team for it. But here, it just doesn't seem to be doing that to that same effect. And so I feel like it could be worth pivoting out, even though it's so tantalizing with the chance of that, not only the Metachamp, but the Umbreon over on Yakko's side as well. But
right. No, I mean, I agree with you. It hasn't been as strong in these situations just because specifically what Yakovich has been playing. But if we look at what Yakovich has been bringing, he's been bringing a team that's technically ABA weak to Gligar because he's bringing a ton of Lantern Superior. So I feel like Tauntaun keeps pairing up the Shadow Alolan Ninetales with Mandibuzz because on paper it's a better core. But I feel like in this particular matchup, you'd be better off sitting the Mandibuzz and bringing the Gligar. Yes, I know you're way weaker to Frostlass if you match up Frostlass versus Gligar than you would be with Mandibuzz, but you're so much stronger against Lantern, and Lantern is going to be on every single team. So I feel like I would personally bring the Gligar and Shadow Alolan Ninetales, and then something else that also beats the Frostlass. So maybe you bring the Lickitung. Maybe you bring Lickitung, Gligar, Shadow Alolan Ninetales. Even if you say swap Lickitung, the worst case scenario is you bait out Umbreon. But then you could just charm down Umbreon. Maybe it's not the end of the world. So I would expect maybe to make a Gligar switch if I was Tauntaun here. But Tonton needs a point if he wants a chance to be in the game and keep it a 3-man race. He needs a point here to stay or get a total of 5 points to have a chance of still winning it for all of Europe.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, this is the point. He is the EUIC winner. He is representing Europe here. I think he at least has the advantage that Lundberger hasn't tweeted out her support for Tonton here to just jinx his chances. But it is the case that if Tonton loses this game, he doesn't lose the tournament because Yakovich, Yako would tie him on battle wins and would win the head-to-head tiebreaker. So at this point, Tonton is playing for the championship here his chance at the championship. He will still be putting his chances in the hands of wdage and Yako to try and figure out if he can potentially come through. But look, it's going to be a really hard fought game, and we've seen two go in, go Aussie's favor. Show the bias here because this is our one and only OCIC champ. So we're going into game number 3 here in the match 5 between OCIC versus EUIC. And straight away, we have a lantern into a flyer. This is not great for Tonton at all, but we have the saving grace in the quick swap into that shadow along the Ninetales, where lantern is probably not in too bad of a spot to sort of just maybe go for a little bit of a chip and dip scenario here, because actually Tonton letting it go.
Yeah, go in the back. So I was thinking maybe you sit Mandabuzz if you are Tauntaun here and bring in the Gligar, but he just did addition. He just added the double flyer. If you're going to keep bringing Superior into a double flyer team, guess what? I'm just going to bring double flyers. Now Superior just has nowhere to go, but if Superior does get some sort of energy advantage as the Lickitung does finish off that Charmalone and Ninetales, it can Frenzy Plant that Gligar in the back. This is going to be clunky to take out this Lickitung if you are the Mandabuzz, but you're going to have to win this game on the back of Gligar. So can Gligar take Europe to keep them in this 3-man race between regions?
Yeah, it's the ultimate question here. I mean, look, this is just a battle of the bulk on the screen at the moment with this lantern. Lickitung, will eventually lose out. But still just trying to get as much damage on here as possible before having to go to that the back lineups, because I mean, you're not in a bad spot losing this Lickitung. You just bring the lantern out. You put yourself in a sort of decent position there where you've got that. You've got the lantern versus Mandabuzz. You can soak up the foul play, the dark pulses. Sorry, but yeah, do you have enough energy to try and push through on this Gligar with 2 shields? Because you're gonna have to try and start to do it with the Superior, which doesn't feel like a winning strategy here. And even going for the Aerial Ace bait as well. But this battle of the Aerial Aces is going to start off with the charge move priority going over into that Gligar's favor, which doesn't put Superior in a good spot at all. This isn't great.
Oh no, and the no shield on the Aerial Ace here. That is huge for Tauntaun. I know you hate that, Steve, because Australia's hopes right there was getting the double bait. But, I mean, Australia's still in it, so don't be too sad yet. The Protect Shield here. But this Gligar should be able to get the wing attack down, which is going to be brutal because now it's going to have a ton of energy going into this Lantern. And we know Mandabuzz has a ton of energy too, and Lantern is pretty energy dry.
Yeah, this isn't looking great for Yako here at all, because the Digger's going to come through, do a ton of damage to this Lantern. It is actually at the point now that this Gligar can probably fast move the Lantern all the way down. Yako did get to the 1 surf, but the writing was on the wall, knew what was happening there, and that this game was going to go to Tonton, meaning that we do finish off with that 2-1 scenario. It looks like we are having a little bit of a buffering on the YouTube stream, but I think we should be good from now on. So apologies to sort of everyone out there. I think we should be right from now on, but hopefully still got that battle coming through, because that was definitely one that Tonton, he made the adjustment and he was able to claw it back, right? Like he knew what he had to do and he was able to put it all together. The Gligar doing a ton of work and showing why it is meta, and potentially showing where the weakness in that Superior does lie if you do sort of have that correct lineup to be to put against it from Tonton's side. But we can sort of come back to the table here, and we're now at a point where JW Naldo are finishing there on 4 wins. Tonton finishing his run at 5 wins, but now we have wdage versus Yako, and it's actually
Tauntaun's. Oh wait, Steve, I don't want to cut you off, but Tauntaun's out of it unless there's a 3-0 on either side. Oh wait, and if there's a 3-0 on either side, actually Tauntaun's officially out of it, right?
Yeah, he's out because either way, even if it's 2-1, someone's going to tie him at 5 wins, and both of them have the head-to-head victory up against Tonton. So despite getting the huge 3-0 up against JW Naldo, it is now actually whittled right on down to a 2-man race between wdage and Yako. Both of them at 1-2, which means that it is purely a case that one of them just needs to get to 2 wins, and they would take it out. Not even quite, actually, because that is correct. You get to 2 wins, you tie with Tonton.
Because Tonton lost both of the tiebreakers versus the remaining 2 trainers that have a chance to win it. So he had his 3-0, but it's against the one trainer that's already out, eliminated. So because you lost both of the tiebreakers, if one trainer goes 2-1, that means they'll be at 5 points. It's a tie, but it doesn't matter. You lost both the tiebreakers. And if one trainer 3-0s, then you just lose in points, and both trainers can't go 1-2. That's just impossible. So you need both trainers to go 1-2, but that's literally impossible. So Tonton is officially eliminated, and now it is between North America and Australia in this final matchup here. And it just comes down to, it's this matchup. Yes, there are other points on the board, but they're both tied with 3 points remaining. So whoever wins this last matchup between wdage and Yakovich is this world champion, brawl champion.
It's probably like, it works out that it's North America versus essentially Australia here, because look at these guys, right? We've got representatives from each country that have, ended up here in the finals. But we've got, that wdage line, who doesn't actually have the double fire, but both of them are running that superior. So these teams are like relatively similar in that we both have Metacham, we both have Lantern, we both have superior. They both got a Frostlass. They both have an Umbreon. The only difference is which pink Pokemon they've brought, with wdage bringing in the pink Gligar and Yako bringing in the Lickitung. So it's really just going to come straight down to that. And I feel like, there's a bit of play on both sides, but I feel like neither of them particularly tilts the scale in any significant way. We don't have a major Registeel target for that Gligar. The Lickitung could be powerful against the Frostlass, but it can be sort of weak against some of those other matchups, like losing the neutral matchup to Superior, tend to not do great against the Umbreon, the Metacham. I feel like this could really go either way, and it's going to very much come down to the playstyle on the battlefield.
Yeah, I think you won't like to hear this, but I think in this specific matchup, it is to your advantage to have Gligar over Lickitung, just because Umbreon is insane in this matchup. There is no counter for Umbreon on either of the teams. Yes, you have Metacham, but both of these Metachams are running Psychic, so they're not true counters to Umbreon. So literally, Umbreon is going to be on every single lineup for both trainers, I would expect. And if that's the case, Lickitung is not valuable in that situation because it's so weak to Umbreon, and you would rather have a Gligar instead of Lickitung. But to be fair, you might just cross off both of those Pokemon because you don't necessarily need to run Gligar either. But against this team, Gligar is pretty safe against everything that is not Frostlass. And if you're bringing Umbreon into every game, Frostlass isn't as strong. So I feel like wdage, even though it's 5 out of 6 the same, the fact that he has the Gligar here is a slight advantage for him.
Look, maybe I was just, huffing some copium, just hoping and praying that it was fine for that Australian side. But I think objectively you're probably correct in that because of that sort of one layer deeper, because of the Frostlass being decent here, but then the Umbreon's already being quite strong, that it may be a little bit struggle street there. Not that it sets up a significant advantage for wdage, but it could definitely put him in a spot that he's in a lot more good scenarios than he is bad. And, we've we've seen wdage come out of bad scenarios before, and so you put him in one that's good. I mean, we've seen him lose from good scenarios today as well, so it can definitely sort of go either way. And Yako, after taking out Tonton with the 2-1, definitely could have it in him to bring it up.
Well, I know we're about to get into this final matchup, but to the Australians' advantage, Steve, who is the better meta player here? It is Yakovich. Yakovich is a proven meta champion at OCIC, going 18-1, the best win percentage ever with a hard meta team. I think only one other trainer has a higher win percentage. It's probably Hard Jeffy, but he wasn't running hard meta like Yakovich. And wdage is a trainer that usually doesn't succeed with hard meta. He succeeds with his own picks. This time, he's trying to see the flaws probably of these meta Pokemons. I'm speaking for him. He never said that himself. But in this situation, that's how I imagine it. So will he finally see the flaws of these meta picks, or will he be able to challenge the meta champion? This is going to be an epic one, Steve.
Absolutely. So let's jump into game number 1 of the final set of the series with Umbreon straight into the Frostlass, putting Yakovich in a terrible spot from the very get-go. But you can see that there is an Umbreon and a Frostlass in the back on the other side as well. So this could very potentially flip into another scenario, but it's just going to be a question of how they decide to play it. And apparently it starts out with Yako going to be burning the shield straight away to try and put a little bit of avalanche chip onto this Umbreon. So I wouldn't be too shocked if we see a bit of a chip and dip action here.
Yeah, and the problem is too, it looks like wdage is going to win alignment. And if he wins alignment, he's going to be able to match up. And there's a big swap into the foul play. There's no answer for the Umbreon, so it's smart. Whenever you lose lead, just swap in Umbreon because there's nothing to counter it. And here comes the Superior, which is crucial. This actually baits out the Superior for Yakovich, and now his Lantern is so much safer against the back line. And I believe the backline Pokemon for wdage is Frostlass. So now the tides have turned. I think Yakovich has the advantage, at least in this backline matchup, but there's still Umbreon to deal with if you're Yakovich.
Yeah, you're right. This was looking like a potentially just completely just dead game for Yako, but he's by being able to bait out the Superior, he's put himself in a spot that he can actually potentially save his Lantern a little bit later. So there's actually this has really turned around to potentially be okay for either trainer here. So now the foul play. Unfortunately, we do see the charge attack priority here. So the Frenzy Plant will be coming through from the Superior onto that Umbreon, which it is very bulky, but Frenzy Plant.
That bulk!
No, it does survive. Wow, no way. So now it's actually, this is even better for Yako. This is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you are going to get snarled down here, and that's going to be annoying to be able to have to deal with this Umbreon, but this Lantern is going to have a lot of chance to be able to deal with this Umbreon and deal with that Frostlass on the back. And if Frostlass doesn't matter what health it's at, it just gets knocked out by Shadow Ball no matter what. So even if your Frostlass like Yako's it's at 80%, it doesn't matter. It's pretty much 100% Frostlass at this point because you're only worried about the Shadow Ball anyway. So you're going to be able to knock out, I believe, with this this Thunderbolt. You're never sure with Umbreon, but I think it is. No, it doesn't. Umbreon does hang on.
Oh, but now we're in this spot where it is actually going to all come down to Frostlass energy. We can see that there is a shield. Oh, well, there was a shield advantage for wdage, but he's decided to burn the first one here on Lantern throwing the Surf. But when it gets that Frostlass, the Frostlass end game, it's going to be a question of can you land the Shadow Ball before your opponent, and that is what it is all going to come down for, with the potential of a catch as well. But there goes the Shadow Ball not quite taking out the Lantern, which means we're also setting up for 2 potential catches on both sides. But we go for an avalanche bait, and he gets it. He gets the shield out of wdage, so it's now just a race. Can either trainer land a Shadow Ball, because that is a lot of energy on wdage's side. But he goes, oh no, he gets the bait the other way as well. This is crazy.
I think wdage is down a Powder Snow, though. I think wdage is down. So I mean, you're going to be able to get, no, down 2 powder snows. Looks like he's going to get to the Shadow Ball comfortably before. And remember, the Umbreon has almost no health. I don't know if it banked the attack. If it banked the attack, here comes a knockout. It will be able to knock out this Frostlass. Did it bank an attack? Yes, it banked an attack. It's going to be able to knock out this Frostlass, but there's no way the Lantern is going to win with Spark. It's going to be a 1 health Pokemon versus 1 health Pokemon, and Spark registers first. But no, it doesn't even knock out the Frostlass, so Frostlass knocks out.
Oh my gosh, Frostlass able to just hang on in the end. That's what a finish. I mean, you know, you're right. It was going to be a 1 fast move versus 1 fast move, but I mean, Butters, this is the finals, right? Like this, it's not even like it's a double elim like finals where it's all final together, but you know, this is for the title and it is absolutely heated up for it.
Yeah, it's interesting because we knew Umbreon was going to be in every single game, but both trainers decided to bring Frostlass as their secondary pick that mirrored each other. They decided that Frostlass was probably going to be really strong against the meta champ that they were expecting to see, or possibly you could bait out the Lantern with the Frostlass or something like that. But looks like both trainers are going for the Umbreon Frostlass core, and Gligar doesn't want any part of that core. So now this almost becomes like an equal team composition, 5 versus 5, Australia versus North America. Australia's up 1-0, and North America needs 1 victory here to stay in the competition, because if Yakovich wins the next game, that's a wrap for Australia.
Yeah, wdage cannot lose. No, he needs every win on the board. And look, wdage has been in this situation before, and he's come back from it many times through his competitive history. So he's not afraid of being in a 0-1 scenario. So look, he's definitely still got a good spot. And, you know, he does have that, like, light team composition advantage overall. And so, you know, Yako was able to play through it once. Can he do it again? Because he only has to do it 1 more time. And he will be the winner of this clash of the international champions. So, I don't know. How do we... I feel like it's going to be very similar teams because the Umbreons are both good. The Frostlasses are both good. And so it's just that sort of counterplay of, does Yako really want to put himself in a spot where his Lantern could just get hit by that Superior in the back? Does he want to think that he can sort of make the same strategy work a second time? Or does he want to go for something that's just that little bit safer and maybe even like a Superior of his own to try and maybe force things go the other way? I don't know. I feel like there's...
It's going to come down to the 2 versus 2. It doesn't come down to 3 versus 3 because, you know, Umbreon's on both teams. So it comes down to the 2 versus 2. Which Pokemon do you bring for that 2 versus 2? And if they bring the same Pokemon to that 2 versus 2, it comes down to these trainers. Is it the meta champion versus pretty much a world champion, a Sylph world champion, and a top 3 in world competition, and multiple time regional champion? So it doesn't get better than this. I think we should see this game number 2.
All right, let's jump into it. And we have only one perspective, but it's the Superior into the Frostlass with a quick swap into Lantern. So we don't know what Yako's cooking. We don't know his back line. We're keeping the suspense by the seams of it. But we've got the Lantern swap in to catch the Surf already, which we saw Yako in the first game catch a resisted move into the mirror Pokemon. He's doing it again. So it's a bit of a different scenario. Because now they're both switch locked in here.
Well, you're so far ahead here. I was saying it comes down to 2 versus 2, and we don't see the other side, but straight off, it was the Frostlass into Superior, which is a huge advantage. And then you're able to swap and catch Surf Energy into your own Lantern, giving your Lantern an advantage. So I feel like Yakovich is so far ahead here. He just has to shore up the alignment against this Lantern, and there's no Protect Shields given either way. And I feel like Yakovich is at the Thunderbolt right now, but it's Charge Attack priority, and he wins the Charge Attack priority.
Wow, huge knowledge to know. But now the Lantern is sort of going in with the Surf, which isn't quite enough to KO. Oh my gosh, there has been so many 1 HP survivals here, and here is just one more that is not good for Yako, because now he
gives up alignment.
He gives up alignment, and now the Frostlass comes in, and the Umbreon is right here to come into it. This this is really, really bad for Yako. I mean, we haven't seen the Pokemon in the back, I don't think, or at least I can't.
It's Umbreon. It's Umbreon. I haven't seen it,
yeah.
but it's Umbreon, Steve. I know it's Umbreon.
Yeah, well, so Umbreon in the back.
I assume he's going to try to swap onto Umbreon once again.
Yeah, it's the most likely outcome. We've seen it twice already. It'll probably happen a third time. And there's the Umbreon actually not getting any sort of catch though. And now it is just the neutral superior up against that Umbreon. The Frenzy Plants are really going to hurt here, and they are still staring down the barrel of that Umbreon into a pretty bad spot for Yako in the back lineup. So like, as much as there's still 4 shields on the field and a lot of charge moves left to throw, it's not in a good spot for Yako at all. And wdage just has to make sure he doesn't throw here, essentially. Like, because I feel like he's just looking down the barrel of the win. As long as he doesn't sort of go off into the daisies, he should be pretty comfortable here, because there's like, he can comfortably shoot off these foul plays, just throw straight Frenzy Plant, or try and land a Frenzy Plant, and you're in a pretty decent spot.
The problem is, though, this Umbreon is just so bulky. It's able to absorb these Frenzy Plants no problem. And if this superior ever gets energy dry and is the Frostlass from Yakovich's side is able to fast attack down and get some momentum, wdage's Umbreon is very close to Avalanche range. As the Protect Shields are just going away for both of these trainers, there is no Protect Shields remaining. It's all going to come down to these last 2v2 Pokemon, no Protect Shields. Will one of these trainers get a swap? But I don't even know if is double Frenzy Plant enough. Yes, double Frenzy Plant will be enough, but you're not going to get knocked out by this foul play. Your timer is up. You could pivot if you wanted to.
Yeah, look, there's a chance that Yako sort of tries to go for another catch here, but and he actually just goes straight into the Frostlass, but the Umbreon comes straight in, goes straight for that foul play. Maybe Yako was sort of hoping to try and get up to a charge move there to throw, but regardless, this Frostlass going to go, not going to go down, but not going to survive, unfortunately. And so now we're going to see that Umbreon come back in. wdage does have the energy advantage here, and so now last resort going through. And I mean, look, we've seen Umbreon survive many times on 1 HP before now, but this time it's going to survive a little bit more than that. And so,
but if this is the last resort, Steve, if this is the last resort and you have energy banked, I don't think Superior has that much energy left. So this is the last resort that needs to knock out, and it does knock out the Umbreon. Can you outpace before the aerial ace? No. wdage keeps the North American dreams alive and barely outpaces for that aerial ace that knocks out the Umbreon and ties the series up 1-1.
Look, I wrote that off way too early. I was like, this feels like a done deal. wdage has got this. But Yako was actually in a much better spot than I gave him credit for. I mean, it really just came down to that wire of, can he get enough energy in the right spots, which is a situation we've seen many times before. Can he push through? He brought in the Frostlass, tried to do something there, but unfortunately it just wasn't going to happen. And then, it was going to be a question of how much energy do you have on the Umbreon? Are you going to be able to get to another charge move to be able to take this thing out? And in the end, unfortunately, just wasn't able to get there. And so Superior, with that one Vine Whip that wdage needed, able to get to that final charge move that was enough to tie up that series and make it so that the last battle is all that matters here to crown the champion here. North America versus Australia here.
You know, it was quite smart, I feel like, from wdage to bring 3 Pokemon that are okay to good against Lantern. Bring your own Lantern, bring Umbreon, and then bring Superior. Even though you lose that matchup against Frostlass with the Superior, you can always safe swap your own Lantern, and then what can counter that? Because Frostlass is not going to beat it. Your own Lantern is going to lose. As we saw, Yakovich lost alignment because he brought in his own Lantern, and even Umbreon can lose to the Lantern as well. So I like the fact that wdage is bringing a hard answer to that Lantern. That is, I feel like, has been a crucial factor in that game number 2, because there was no hard answer to that Lantern safe swap. And Frostlass is good, but if there's a team of Umbreon Lantern, there's not a lot of places that Frostlass can go. So do we see the adjustment in that game number 3? Do we just see the same team? Do we see Umbreon, Lantern, Superior? And then it might just come down to the calls. Which trainer will lead what in that game number 3 to win it all?
Let's find out now with an Umbreon into Superior. No hard counter in the lead here, but we've got Superior and Medicham in the back. wdage actually bringing the Medi in, while Yako is still playing for that same Umbreon Frostlass strategy in the back as well. So we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out, because these Frenzy Plants, again, they will start to chip away at this Umbreon, but it is so bulky. It's just going to be a question of where these Pokemon land, because I think Yako is expecting a different game than the one he's about to get. Looking at those Pokemon in the back, there's no Frostlass to land his Umbreon on.
Yeah, and both trainers decided to bring the Superior and Umbreon, but then switched up their third pick. Neither trainer brought the Lantern, and Yakovich brought that Frostlass. And here comes the swap into the Aerial Ace. Trying to catch a Frenzy Plant probably, but takes the super effective Aerial Ace instead. And then do you swap out into your Frostlass here? Try to get that positive matchup that your Frostlass desperately needs. But no, actually staying in and losing charge attack priority, and is going to get knocked out by this Aerial Ace. But still, Frostlass, this is good for Yakovich. She's going to find a matchup with Frostlass, which he struggled to do in game number 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we're in a spot that he can sort of potentially go for a situation where he decides to shield up and try and get a lot more energy. But it looks like he's getting dangerously close to not clicking that Protect Shield button, but does make the right call in the end. Just wanted to stress us out watching at home. But he's already at another Aerial Ace, so needs to throw this Avalanche before a Frenzy Plant was going to come through again. And wdage just going to let this one go, and now can sort of comfortably bring that Umbreon back in and make, I mean, this is going to be a bit rough for Yako, because he doesn't know that there is a Medicham standing back there, ready to face off against his Umbreon whenever it does decide to come in. So gets the shield with the Avalanche, but he can comfortably get a few more before the foul play comes through, tries to catch.
There it is! There's
catch.
The swap!
Oh my gosh. Like, look, this man is like comfortable with his catches, getting so many today. But he is now going to have to face a Medicham. Oh, not yet. He's actually going to stay in, get a little bit of energy to take on that, the Avalanches from the Frostlass as well. But now he sees that the Medicham comes out. It's all revealed, and this energy on Umbreon is not going to be doing a lot for Yakovich. This Medicham can tank a lot of them, but doesn't have Dynamic Punch, so is relying on the counter damage. Is certainly poised to eventually be able to KO here, but might not have a lot of health to face off against the Frostlass in the back when it does come out.
Yeah, and the key factor is wdage stayed in to bank up that foul play again, because these timers will eventually come back up. Here comes the foul play. It gets no Protect Shield. This is going to be really close to knocking out. If you went for the Last Resort here, it would have been even closer, because Last Resort technically does a little more damage. And now wdage is energy capped, going to throw this Ice Punch, probably going to back-to-back Ice Punch here. But the crucial factor is by the time you back-to-back Ice Punch, the timers are up now. Back-to-back Ice Punch is swapped on. No, it's not swapped on. So here comes the Psychic instead. The poise from wdage to not throw the Ice Punch. Yakovich, down goes Frostlass.
Oh my gosh.
And there it is. Suddenly, it's the Umbreon versus Umbreon. What this whole matchup hinged on was the battle of the Umbreon, but it comes down to a place where wdage in North America has the health advantage, and as his last resort, takes a 2-1 victory and officially claims the title of Clash of the Champions champion.
Yeah, absolutely. Just crazy finish there. I mean, you're right. It was just the poise, the waiting, the being calm, the knowing, okay, the switch timer is about to be up here. The Frostlass could come in. I can still hit that Psychic. And if I land that Psychic, he knows he has to either he shields up the Psychic or he loses. And if he shields up the Psychic, he would still then have to take the foul play that was sitting there on the Umbreon in the back with his own switch timer coming up again. So either way, wdage was set to win regardless of what Yako did, which means that we end up in the spot where both wdage and Tonton finish on 5 wins, but with the head-to-head tiebreaker, because wdage was able to defeat Tonton earlier in the tournament, it does mean that the victory goes to wdage in a crazily close tournament. I mean, look at this. Everyone's on either 4 or 5 wins here. Almost all 2-1s with a single 3-0 on the board. I mean, this is just a collection of absolutely so talented trainers, all international championship winners, and it really showed here because, I mean, it's no one would expect it to be this close. I think, maybe you expect a tiebreaker.
5-5, 4-4, right? In total points.
Yeah. Real close
crazy
stuff. But, of course, wdage sort of coming out as the sort of a major victor at the end of the day, able to come out with the 5 wins, the key wins, I suppose you could say, against the trainers that he needed to win against, that specifically sort of being Tonton there. But, does mean that wdage takes out the Clash of the Champions International to secure himself that just a big victory, and again, cementing himself as potentially, and I don't think many people would argue against wdage being the best trainer in the world at the moment in Pokemon Go. Again, just coming off the back of the Sylph Arena World Championship title, coming off of 3rd place at the Yokohama World Championships, coming off of the Pittsburgh regional win with the NAIC win. So many wins under his belt, and this is just one more for the list. It probably doesn't even fit on the resume at this point. There is so much victory in wdage's life, and there is so much more to come, but really incredible job from wdage.
It just cements the fact that he has separated himself from his peers. Even against these other international champions, he is just slightly ahead of them in terms of resume and consistency at these top level tournaments, the Sylph World Champion as well. So being able to just dominate on the biggest stages, especially recently. He had one flub, I guess, in Toronto where he didn't make day 2. But other than that, this trainer has been absolutely on fire for months after months. So he has put himself on another level. He continues to be at that other level in this Clash of the Champions.
Absolutely. But again, massive just congratulations to all 4 competitors, because they all played insanely well. Like, that was just an incredible set of matches all the way through. Even like nothing was completely just sold down the river. No chance at all. They were all really tight games. There was so many 1 HP Pokemon just surviving, getting that one final charge move, really coming all down to IVs. Again, this was the first time that we're sort of seeing the open team sheets come into action ahead of it being the official rule set for the Play Pokemon Championship Series starting this weekend at LAIC, or this coming weekend. I guess next weekend for most of you. It's just changes things in a different way. It makes you play slightly differently with a little more knowledge, and it comes a lot more down to pure skill. And look, these guys are all incredibly skilled trainers, and I'm really looking forward to the first international champion of the 2024 season to be crowned this coming weekend as well. So, we'll see if JW Naldo can secure that title, because he definitely, as we've seen today, still has the skill to be able to push through.
Yeah, can he get the back-to-back? He brought out the Toxapex last year, and no one expected that poison type. Does he bring out the Clodsire this year and have a back-to-back with poison types? I mean, that's also going to be an interesting wrinkle. But yeah, congratulations. Like you mentioned, the scores were 5 for wdage, 5 for Tonton, but wdage wins the head-to-head, and then 4 for Yakovevich and 4 for JW Naldo. I'm not actually sure who won the head-to-head between those two, but 5-5, 4-4, it doesn't get closer than that.
Well, JW Naldo actually defeated both wdage and Yakovich. It's like he was actually he did incredibly well. He went 2-1, which is like the second best match result win, only tying with wdage on 2 match wins to 1 match loss. But just did lose the sort of 0-3 to Tonton in his only one, the only person he lost to. So still an incredible performance from JW Naldo, which is huge, taking out essentially the 2 guys that were sort of fighting it out at the end. So really just a tight competition all the way through. It really was sort of anyone's game, the way these sort of went. Like one game going a different direction could completely change everything, and for it to all come down to just one single battle at the end, definitely just feels right to me. So massive congratulations to everyone, and of course a massive thank you to all of the competitors for signing on to join in, to do these battles, to record them, to prepare them for us, just so that we can sort of get that insight, get some more battles, because without these guys, we wouldn't have much of a stream here today. So really, really appreciative. But of course, also appreciative to this man right here, Butters, for sitting with me for the last 3 hours now, with no chance of break, not even a chance for the cameras to get turned off for the most part. So really appreciative of going for that real long haul with me. It's always a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, thank you to you. This competition was awesome, and I know you're going to continue these type of competitions, so you're doing awesome work, and it's a pleasure to be there, to be here to cast with you, and of course to see these are the best of the best. I mean, these are international champions, so anytime I have a chance to witness their gameplay, I always learn something, and so I had a fun time. And thank you to PvP Steve. Thank you. This was awesome. It was a great time.
Oh, absolutely. I've had a really great time as well. And, as I guess the hint, the Clash of the Champions series will continue a lot sooner than you may think. We may return sort of next month sometime. And potentially, it's not the last of the YACOBERVICH feature. We might be going... I'm sure this doesn't give it away, but... we might be going a little bit upside down for the next series of the Clash of the Champions. So stay tuned for more news on all of that, because there are plenty more awesome battles coming up in the future. But with that said, they're not there now, but for those of you watching later, I will sort of go back in and plug Butters' links in the description as always, because not only a fantastic commentator that we see many times on the Championship series, but also a lovely streamer as well. So we'll get the link through. Always a good to sort of miss the days of really the really spicy legend pushes that are always sort of came through as well. But yeah, definitely worth giving Butters a follow, even if it's just on Twitter or X, for more hyping up of a Pokemon that probably won't succeed in anytime soon in the Championship series. But yeah, with that, I mean, any last words before we head off into the sunset, Butters?
No, it was awesome. It was cool to see team sheets in action. I am interested to see how that plays out in the Championship series. So I'm glad that you kind of brought that as a wrinkle into this tournament, because these are the best trainers with these open team sheets. And especially, I feel like open team sheets are more of a factor in these best of 3 series. So day 1 type of thing. And this is the whole format of this. And yeah, it was really interesting to see that all play out. And I feel like, especially in that charm matchup with Tonton, that was a huge factor. So it was lovely to see that in action, and it was a lovely time hanging out with you. So can't wait for the upside down version of the Clash of the Champions next time.
No, absolutely. So with that said, thank you all for sort of coming out and watching. Of course, let me know what sort of Clash of the Champions you might sort of be keen to see in the future. There's a few up the pipeline, so we're definitely excited to see how it all goes. But with that said, unfortunately, again, rating is a bit of a weird feature on YouTube live streams, and that you sort of have to pre-prepare it all. It doesn't seem like you can do it very well on the fly. Plus, there's not a lot of Pogo PvP streaming happening on YouTube regardless. So if you're sort of keen for more live battles, head over to twitch.tv. I think that'll be the better way to go. But with that said, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share the subscribe on, and we'll see you